Hello, everyone, and welcome to Small Screen Star Wars. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson,
Hello.
and it's been a while. We haven't been on since back in the day with Obi-Wan, but Andor's here now. It's what a crazy world we live in, where every couple months there's a new Star Wars show on. I really hit the jackpot with this podcast name, right? So
You really
anyway,
did, yeah.
yeah, we're gonna be covering Andor here. Season 1, episodes 1 through 3. This is the premiere. They dropped all 3 episodes on Wednesday, recording on today being Thursday. And going forward, that will be the typical schedule. We'll record Thursdays. The podcast itself will drop on Fridays. The live feed, the live stream on Thursday nights. And that's right. You can follow along. You can watch, listen, tune in to our streams on Thursday nights. The best way to do that, follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, towerofbabble.ca/subscribe or /live, depending on what you want to do. And yeah, so like I said, we're going to be covering Andor. Lots, a little bit different this time. Andor as a series is stylistically different, but also has many more episodes than most of these Star Wars shows that we've seen. I think this first season is set to have 12 episodes. I think.
Oh, is it? Well,
if
they're
I'm
pretty
not
short,
mistaken.
aren't they?
Well, the ones that we saw here in the first 3, if we can use that as a barometer, are anywhere from 38 to 42. I think one was like 35 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be a little bit longer, but also the show itself takes a bit of a different kind of has a different feel. It's a little bit more traditional in the way it does its storytelling, in terms of like old school style, I would say pre golden age of television. This is kind of a throwback to things like The Wire and stuff like that. So anyway, we'll get into that when we get into the actual recap itself. Before we do that, though, we should quickly mention a couple things. I'm going to be on a long work trip. I leave October 9th, and I don't get back till November 29th of this year to Australia and Japan, which means we'll have to figure out a way to do these.
Whoa, I didn't know you were doing that. That's cool.
Surprise.
Yeah, I was like,
exactly.
Cool. I'm also just hearing about this, everybody.
So we're going to have to figure out a way to, so your Thursday nights will be my Friday mornings, I believe. So we can probably do that because no one else is going to be working that time. I can slot in a Star Wars podcast for those times.
Oh.
And
I'll hear that, guys? He's going to fit us into his busy, fancy schedule.
That's right. Hey, Star Wars is pretty important. I don't make these types of exceptions for everybody. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, 12 episodes in the first season. The second season's supposed to be, I think, even longer, and cover kind of a shorter amount of time. This first season's supposed to cover many years in time. Show's not doing super well in terms of. I was looking at some tweets today from some of my favorite Star Wars YouTubers, etc. And they were saying that the numbers that they're seeing for their recaps and reviews are way lower than what they've seen for things like The Mandalorian or even The Bad Batch or stuff like that.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah, we'll talk about maybe why that is in a little bit, but I'm hoping that they've already committed to the 2 seasons, and we don't have to worry about this ending at the end of season 1, and we're not going to get a season 2 because it's not popular enough.
Right.
That would be a crying shame. So anyway, we'll talk about some of why some folks might not be as interested, but it also could be a marketing problem. I don't know how well this show was marketed. I think it could have been marketed a little bit better. But hey, I'm not a marketer, so I can't really judge that too harshly. Yeah. And between when we last recorded and now, D23 also happened. And at D23, we had a couple things. We saw a trailer for Season 3 of The Mandalorian. We saw a trailer for Tales of the Jedi, which people had seen at Star Wars Celebration, but this is the first time it came online. I assume you've seen those?
Nope.
You have not? Oh man.
You know
Okay.
how I don't like to watch trailers.
Well, anyway, season 3 of Mando. I want to kind of touch on it quickly here before we jump into this.
Oh,
The
wait, no, I
third
did see that one. Sorry, I did see that.
Lots
I
more
lied.
Mandalorians. Lots of different colored helmets. Looks like they're going to go to Mandalore legit this time.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But it doesn't from a structural standpoint, it doesn't really look that much different than or creative standpoint than previous Mandalorians seasons. So it's still got adventure of the week type vibes is what I'm looking at. Feeling like maybe a little bit longer arcs this season, but it's Mando and Baby Yoda off in a souped up Naboo starfighter just cruising around the galaxy. It's kind of what it looks like. I'm here for it, for the record.
Sounds great to me.
And then the Tales of the Jedi. We're big fans of the Star Wars animation stuff over here.
Huge.
We covered Bad Batch. We covered the final season of Clone Wars. Both very, very good. I think that first 90-minute premiere episode of the Bad Batch might be one of my favorite Star Wars things. Period. It's just so cool, in my opinion.
Ooh, hot take.
I don't think it's that hot. It's pretty cool. It's like an animated Star Wars movie with clone troopers. It's awesome. So anyway, we know we're getting season 2. By the way, we also got a trailer for that. Looks very cool. And that's not coming out till next year, I believe, early next year. And so we're really not going to be short for Star Wars really at all. But Tales of the Jedi looks absolutely amazing. It's the same style animation. It's that Lucasfilm animation style that it's just gotten better and better and better every time.
And we're going to get some Dooku stories.
Young Dooku.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, so we're going to see young Dooku before he abandons the Jedi Order. I'm curious how much, because you know how there is the Ahsoka novel,
Yeah, it's a great novel.
It's largely non-canon now. It's like most of it's been kind of overwritten.
That's a bummer. I don't get why, because okay. Is it because she... Well, never mind. I don't know if it's spoilers or not. Skip 20 seconds. We don't want spoilers for a book that's been out forever. Is it because she kills an Inquisitor? Is that why?
I don't think so. Her origin story, like her not so much origin. Well, I think it is partially her origin story and also her kind of what she was doing in between episodes 3 and 4 are slightly different than what they are in the book versus what we've seen now on in live action, etc.
Yeah, but that book could still be taking place
in a sliver of her time.
At a different pinpoint in time, but I don't know. I guess. Fine.
Anyway, listen. I'm not here to police canon. All I'm saying is that there is also a book that I listen to because I'm more of a audiobook guy myself.
Yeah, Julian doesn't know how to read in case.
Yeah, I am also illiterate, just in case you were worried. It's crazy that they haven't. That's why he podcasts. Yeah, that's right. I don't want to actually write anything or read anything. I just want to say things and listen to things. That's the way my brain works, and that is true actually. But
sorry, that's how I feel about people who only listen to audiobooks.
Right, that we're stupider. We're stupider than the rest of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hear that? People listening to podcasts who probably also listen to audiobooks. She doesn't think highly of you. There was another audiobook. I don't remember the name of it now. But it covered this time where Dooku it was jumping around flashbacks forward and backward, dealing with like a young Dooku before he left the Jedi Order, and then an older Dooku once he'd already become Count Dooku. A young Sifo Dyas has a large role in that one. Qui-Gon. It's really cool.
Is this a newer book or an older book?
No, it's a couple years old now.
Oh, okay.
I should
wonder
if
it's in my house. Might have it.
I really liked it. I don't necessarily recall who was Dooku's apprentice from the Clone Wars.
Qui-Gon.
No, from the Clone Wars. The evil white lady.
Asajj Ventress?
Asajj. Yeah. So it's a lot of it's from her perspective as she's on a mission
Oh.
to do something for
Oh.
Dooku. I think it's like
Yeah.
called something Jedi Lost or something like that.
Something like that. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't read it yet, but I'm getting through some of the Thrawn books right now.
Um, I can just like if I just Google Jedi
I'm
Lost
trying to think. It's
Star
like
Wars book. I'm sure I can find it. Dooku Jedi Lost.
Duke. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dooku Jedi
there
Lost.
we
That
go.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
So, but
Yeah.
I'll be interested to
Because I'm like,
see.
it's not. Yeah. Because I was just thinking, there's a little bit of Dooku stuff in Master and Apprentice that
Was that
came
the
out
young
not that long
Obi-Wan
ago.
one?
It's young Obi-Wan, and there's like very small amounts, like not a lot. It's just like he gets referenced every once
Right.
in a while in there. But yeah. No,
Um,
that I have heard that Dooku Jedi Lost is a very good book, though.
I did like it. I did like
I'm
it a
gonna read
lot.
it for real.
Well, you let us know what you think. For real. Unlike mine
It's
version.
not real reading.
Anyway, so I listened to that book, and I'm curious to see how much, if at all, this Tales of the Jedi stuff overwrites any of that or plays out the same. There are some key moments in Dooku's life that are like referenced in this book, obviously, because it's about him. So if we're gonna spend like these mini short episodes with these characters, it looks like we're gonna see like a baby version of Ahsoka, because they just can't help themselves when it comes to Ahsoka stories. Dave Filoni can't; he has to put her in everything, and I'm fine with that, to be for the record.
She's the best.
So,
Oh,
how are you gonna feel when she gets killed? Eventually, she's gonna die, right?
I'm gonna be real upset about it.
Are you gonna be here?
Probably
Okay,
cry.
prediction right now. Do you think she dies in like a traditional way, or does she turn into a pile of clothes, like Obi-Wan and Anakin?
I think she turns into a pile of clothes, because if she didn't, then she wouldn't be able to
Talk
be
to
a
Rey.
voice talking to Rey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
Well, doesn't Qui-Gon talk to her too, and he gets stabbed through the chest, right?
True. He figures it out afterwards, though.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah,
Right.
I don't know.
The rules are not concrete, okay? It's fluid. But anyway, I'm just curious to see how that works. I mean, these are mini episodes, so you're going to concentrate on these key moments, and it'd be interesting to see what that overlap is, if any. Anyway, so that's a little bit on that. Obviously, we'll be covering those shows when they come out. Let's get into Andor. There's lots to cover. 3 episodes. Although I think we'll go through these faster than I think we would some of those other, Mando or even Bad Batch, where there was so many little Easter eggs, little things to talk about. This is a little bit, like I said before, off the top. This show is a bunch more traditional in the way it is presented. Okay, it's a slow burn. And
I was gonna ask you to explain, because I was like, I don't know what you mean by that, but it's I get it though. Like, I feel like it didn't grab my attention in those first 2 episodes. The third one is kind of when it started to pick up and get a little bit better. But so I get why some people like the viewership might be lower. Also, if you haven't watched Rogue One, you're not gonna watch this either. So
my girlfriend hasn't seen Rogue One. That's a great point.
Yeah.
We haven't watched it. We did watch the first 3 episodes. She didn't love them. But there is something to be said about maybe not watching Rogue One until after this series is over, and then getting that kind of like, here, you met Andor as a young boy, here's his whole life, and then spoilers for Rogue One, he dies. I don't know. But like, I think that but like for something too, and then you watch episode 4 right after, and it kind of has like a really strong thematic feel. So I put this out on Twitter, and I got some responses on that. Here, I'll read some, so I can at least credit people fairly. But I'm on the fence about that still. I love Rogue One as a movie so much. I don't want necessarily wait that long to rewatch it, because it's like that'll be 2 years before the time we get to watch it again. But anyway, so
that's ridiculous.
So Jedi for Life said, I'm a firm believer in watching things in their release order. However, in this particular scenario, it could enhance the suspense if she waits to watch the movie after. I tend to this is my favorite comment, because I think it's absolutely spot on, because I also believe that watching in release order is probably the best way, because ultimately they're made in release order, quote unquote, with the world's context of those movies having coming up before, even if it's a sequel or prequel or whatever, right? So they have to grapple with that as the creatives of those projects. So you're kind of losing some of the thematic touch points if you don't watch it in that way. Like, would you watch episode 1, 2, 3, then 4,
No.
5, 6?
I was
I don't think
just gonna
so.
say that. Like, I don't think anybody who's like new to Star Wars, you're not gonna be like, well, start at episode 1 and then stop at episode 2. Once you
Then
get
watch it.
now watch the entire animated series
Yeah, right. Exactly.
before 3.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? That'd be kind of insane.
Then watch most of 3, stop again.
Yeah.
Watch a part of the animated series again. You'll know which ones because they're slightly colored differently. And then and they have the green LucasArts logo on the front. Trust me, you'll notice. And then watch that part of Revenge of the Sith. Trust me, again, it's gonna be worth it. Thematic similarities. What? And then watch Obi-Wan, then watch Andor, then watch, you know what I'm saying? And then watch Rogue One, then watch episode 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, like it just ruins it. Like it's
then
like
Mando.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So I don't. Anyway, I think in this unique scenario, I think there is something to be said about maybe not telling her because she has no idea, right?
It just depends on what she cares. Like if she doesn't care, then yeah.
So then there was also Jeff, who says, if someone was watching the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy for the first time, would you suggest watching Obi-Wan in between? Not sure I would, due to those continuity issues. Given how good Rogue One is, I'm not sure I'd have faith in the TV show being good enough to make the movie better. I don't know, Jeff. I think based on what we're seeing here, this show seems to be doing exactly what people wanted out of Rogue One, which was fleshing out the characters to a complete, to a much deeper level. Of course, we're dealing with only one character here. Who knows? Maybe we'll meet some of the others. Although I don't remember now. I should have rewatched Rogue One before watching this. Does Andor meet all those characters for the first time in that show, or does he know any of them before?
I can't remember. I think he meets Jin during this, like during Rogue One. I'm pretty sure.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember. I'm like, who else is there? Like Baze and Chirrut know each other, I think.
Yeah, but do they know Andor? Probably not, right?
I don't know. Maybe the droid K2?
Yeah, I think so. K2's not in
Andor?
the first season, but I remember they talked about him not being in the series, and there was like a specific reason for that. And it's not clear. I think they said, well, it's like it'd be a little conspicuous for someone to be walking around with an Imperial droid all the time. So it's like we got to figure. I'm sure he'll make an appearance somewhere in season 2. Is my bet.
I guess we shall see, but I have a feeling that most of them are not going to be in this. So
yeah, so Tony Gilroy is the writer director of this. He's also kind of the secret director of Rogue One. He did a lot of work on the reshoots and script work to kind of quote unquote fix that movie. So he is already closely tied to Rogue One. Tony Gilroy, if you're not familiar with him, he is the writer director of a classic political thriller from 2007, Michael Clayton, a movie that I have actually seen, but I'll just put it out there. I did not in 2007. I was graduating from high school. Did not have the patience for a slow political thriller. Okay,
which movie is this?
Michael Clayton stars.
Oh, that's the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never
George
even heard
Clooney.
of it.
And then he also directed Duplicity and The Bourne Legacy. So I think there is some.
It's a real random collection of.
He's more of a writer. He's got 23 writing credits,
Gotcha,
3 directing credits, and 7 producing credits. But so he wrote The Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That
makes
Michael
more sense.
Clayton, Duplicity again, The Bourne Legacy. He also wrote the screenplay for The Great Wall, and that movie's very bad. But who are we to judge? But anywho, he also did some producing for House of Cards. So this will give you kind of a sense of kind of his filmography. Okay. The point being is his style is very much this slow burn. That it is not the punch you in the face space western action adventure movie, and that might turn people off a little bit. I think that's a very valid critique. Maybe I don't even know if critique, but I
Yeah.
just can understand why people might bounce off a little bit. I personally, my take is I really like it so far. I don't love it, but
Yeah, I would
I think
say
we just need more time.
I feel similar about it. Like, yeah, I'm not like mad about it. There's nothing that I like dislike about it, but I did find it like the first 2 episodes a little slow. Like it wasn't holding my attention the way
Right.
other things do. Certain things like were like, "Whoa," like kind of surprised me, but I felt those very few and far between, and I was just cracking a lot of jokes while I was watching it.
Well,
So,
Jeremy, who I asked if he wanted to come on today, he said no,
mhm.
thank you. Well, he didn't say thank you. He just said no. But anyway, he said no, and I hope you enjoy watching a bunch of space construction workers for 3 hours or whatever she said.
Yeah.
So, hey, okay. So the
Hey,
trailers
we
for
got
this show
we got some
were,
Star Wars firsts in this, so and I'll explain them
yeah,
when we get
okay.
to them.
Is it the makeout sesh? Is one of them the makeout
No,
sesh? Really? Okay.
I
Have we had
don't
a lot of
really.
makeout sessions in Star
I
Wars?
was
I
like,
don't think.
what makeout sesh?
Yeah, Biz or whatever her name is, and
I don't know.
Tim with an extra M.
Tim. Yeah.
Um, um, let's talk about those Star Wars first when we get there. But
Sure.
just generally speaking, the trailers for the show looked unreal. Like some of the stuff that we were
Yeah.
seeing looked very exciting. We only saw a very small sliver of that in these first 3 episodes, and I think that bodes well for the rest of the season. I think they
Mhm.
released these first 3 episodes because they knew that by the first episode, if someone just watched that first episode, they're like, "I'll see you in a week." They'd be like, "I won't be back."
Yeah, I'm
I
glad
think
they
that
did
would
the
have been
first
tough.
3. That's smart move on their part.
And I got to be honest, like, sure, we're not getting Star Wars movies right now, and that is a massive bummer, in my opinion. But the thing is, when they drop these new shows and they drop like multiple episodes at once, it is like essentially watching a Star Wars movie at home for the first time.
Yeah.
Every one of these drops. This was 2 and a bit hours. That's the length of an average Star Wars movie. Like I mentioned that the Bad Batch 90-minute premiere episode. That's like a short animated film. Like that, all that stuff totally works for me. So yes, I want Star Wars back on the big screen, and despite the name of this podcast, we probably still will review those. But
Oh yeah.
I will just say, give the show a little bit of time. It is setting the stage for things to come, and that what we've seen here will be important, if for the very, if not at least for the character stuff, right? So we might not get spend much more time on Ferrex. I suspect we're not going to spend a lot of time on
I doubt
Ferrex
it.
from this
Yeah.
moment on. But what we've seen about how the Empire, quote unquote, the world of the average person under the Empire looks and feels right now, how what brought Andor to this place so he could join the rebellion, and I feel like that's kind of where we start episode 4. In episode 3, we're dealing with Andor kind of making this kind of crucial decision. He has to leave. He has
Mhm.
someone kind of like, come with me if you want to live, Terminator moment almost. And and now from the trailers, it seems like we're going to enter this wider world of the rebellion, right? And the rebellion's very young at this point,
Right.
and I can't wait for to kind of see that stuff grow. And of course, they probably would have. I think I've heard someone say that they would have called this show Star Wars Rebels if that name wasn't already taken.
Yeah, probably.
But I am excited for that stuff. But at the same time, it's like, guys, I understand these first 3 episodes were a little slow, and I think that's fair. But on rewatch, I really, really like them a lot more. I would have said, if I hadn't rewatched them, I would have said I only liked them, didn't love them. At this point, I really like them.
Okay,
Don't
fair
love
enough.
them. I
Maybe I
think
have to
that
give them a rewatch.
there's a
I
lot of
guess.
nuance that I think you see in like the look of like little subtle facial movements and like the way that people react to things that people say. Once you kind of understand kind of where things are going,
Right, yeah.
you can kind of catch those things, and I think those things really pay off. Anywho, like for instance, I'll just mention one right now. When Andor's talking to that guy and he's trying to like barter his way to on a transport ship,
Yeah.
and that guy's talking about how his homeworld was like destroyed in a mining accident. I'm kind of more thinking about, oh, interesting, that's like world building. I'm thinking about the first time I watched it, And then the second time, I'm just looking at Diego Luna's face, and he just looks so sad
Yeah.
listening to this guy talk, even though he's pretending to be like, oh, I don't know what that is. What's a whatever the heck they're called? Canary.
Canary.
What's a canary, right?
Yeah.
He just looks devastated, right? And I think that those
Mhm.
are kind of these subtle moments that you're going to get on as the show goes on. It wants to give you these slow moments. It wants to give you these character moments. I've been dreaming about a Star Wars show like this for a long time, and I'm pretty happy it's here. I'll just put it that way. Okay, let's get into the recap. Anything else you want to mention, just generally speaking, before we talk about the scenes?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we're talking about Andor Season 1, Episode 1, Casa. I think it's pretty straightforward why it's called that. That is apparently his like original name
Mhm.
from what's it called again? Sorry,
Canary.
Canary, right? And they speak Canary on that planet. I did find it fascinating that we didn't get any subtitles. What did you think of that no subtitles thing?
It bothered me.
Yeah, you don't like that? Okay.
Like, I get it. It was fine. I sometimes when they do that on purpose, it makes me feel like my TV is broken. So I
So
was literally
you
going to
just get
ask you, like,
stressed
did you
out.
have subtitles? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, are there supposed to be subtitles? Are they not working? But I pretty much watch everything with subtitles on now all the time.
Right.
And sometimes I'm always worried that that's going to like mess it up when there's other subtitles. You know what I mean?
There is sometimes when I watch House of the Dragon,
Yeah.
and don't get me started about how much I hate Crave, okay? Because I hate Crave. Belle, you can shove it. But this is another complaint I have, which is that and I also like to watch with subtitles, so I don't feel like I'm missing like
Yeah.
what people are saying, especially when they're speaking like thick accents and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But every once in a while, they will switch to speaking another language in that show, and the subtitles for that other language are hard coded into the episode,
Yes.
but the subtitles that like the closed captioning will be like start speaking in other language over top of the first line of dialogue that is saying in the other, and I can't read it, so I have to just like
Oh.
guess what they're talking. I mean, I can pick it up on context clues, but it's
Yeah.
super frustrating. So here I had the subtitles on already, and then it's just like speaking in Canary, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
then it's like, okay.
I mean, like, you kind of get the gist of what you can pick it up just by what's happening. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
like you need the dialogue because those young actors are actually doing a very good job of, um, I don't know what you call it, like when you're using your face and your emotions and like body acting, right? So
Yeah.
they're doing a very good job at like conveying the emotions and like
These,
kind of what's
I
going
think
on
it's a
in a
great
scene.
point. Great child actors here.
Yeah, they're
Like,
awesome. All of them are fantastic.
yeah, especially for
kids.
not
Yeah.
being able to actually use language at all.
Yeah.
I thought Canary as a language is pretty interesting. I don't know if it's completely made up. It sounds a lot like Portuguese, so take
Oh,
that for what
okay.
you will.
Yeah.
um, I found that the lack of the choice, which it's obviously a choice to not use subtitles,
Right.
it is intentional, and I think the goal that they're trying to establish here is like a disconnection from the quote unquote modern world, and just to
Yeah.
really separate you from these children and their circumstances. And it's very voyeuristic. It's like you're sitting there watching these people. You have it's like you're sitting in a restaurant in another country and you don't know what anyone's saying, and you're people watching.
Yeah.
You just kind of pick up things based on context clues, but I think that's the goal here.
Yeah, I think
And I
so
think
too.
it does largely work to hit that. Okay, so we start with, of course, the Star Wars opening. I'm always checking to see if there's anything new. So we have Vader, BB-8, 3PO, Kylo, R2, Rebel Helmet, Scout Trooper, First Order Trooper, all boring and old. No, but we do get a new droid, B2EMO, B2EMO, who we meet in this episode. So he gets a little appearance here as well. So that's nice. And then we get the Andor title sequence, which we get at the beginning of each episode. Blank starfield. It kind of looks like, a crawl could start coming down at any moment, right?
Right.
But instead we get this kind of like this planet in a dawn, I guess. It looks like it's light coming up from the bottom, and then his name slowly comes up. The Andor title slowly comes up. Beautiful musical sequence. It's super, just like kind of the rest of the show. It's slow and drawn out. I do like it, and it feels way more sci-fi in like style and theme than maybe like space fantasy, which we're maybe more used to in Star Wars. So, I know, what did you think of this title sequence?
Yeah, no, I mean, you always pick up on things way better than I do on title scenes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I thought it was very fitting for how the rest of everything like sort of played out and looked. And yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I just mostly for me it was the music and
Yeah,
I
I
think the
did like
music.
I enjoyed most of the music like in these episodes. I found it. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was good.
I think the music's great. Let me just make sure we're crediting the music to the right people. Series music
Yeah.
by Nicholas Britell, known for Moonlight. Oh, the score for Moonlight's also amazing. Succession. Um, let's see what else here. Cruella, Vice. Um, lot of stuff I haven't seen, but but I have seen Moonlight, and that movie. Obviously, Oscar winner, but also one of the best scores. Like it's just a very evocative score I
Hmm.
found in that film. So, yeah, great work here by Nicholas. Anywho, let's get into the episode itself. We start on Morlana 1. This is the Preox Morlana corporate zone, and this is taking place in 5 BBY. Now, this is we're learning this information not because I have to look this up, because it's right on the screen. We get these like title cards, and I find that interesting. It obviously matches what they did in Rogue One, where we got these different like title cards for different planets as we went around.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I like it. I prefer it over this kind of like we're not going to tell you anything and like all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
nameless planets, or you have to pick up on clues or whatever. I think it's cool. It reminds me of like a spy thriller film,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know.
Exactly.
So I'm
No,
into
I
it.
like when they tell you exactly where we are and what the time frame is.
And 5 BBY, obviously a like I don't know exact. I have to look at the exact timeline, but this is only a few years separated from Obi-Wan, the series, a couple years before, and or it's a couple years after, right?
Hmm.
And it's an interesting time because it's the rebellion would be in kind of its not necessarily its earliest stages, but it's very much in its nascent stage.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
5 years before the events of Rogue One, basically, is what they're telling us here.
Hmm.
And there's lots for the rebellion because remember when you pick up with the rebellion, you know they have their base on Yavin at the time, but they really only came together for the first time. The first, you know, as it says in there at the scroll, the opening crawl of Episode 4, the Rebel Alliance got their first major victory. What we found out was at Scarif, but they didn't mention Scarif at the time, obviously, because that didn't exist yet. But this is 5 years before that, which means that the Rebel cells are still very separate
Right.
at this
Yes.
time. Yeah. Okay, so this is a new planet. There's this. I find this really interesting. This Preox Morlana Corporation. This is a planet essentially owned by a corporation. Think of the You let the dystopian feelings flow through you. But it really feels like a cyberpunk. It has a very cyberpunk-esque vibe to it. More so than anything I've ever seen in Star Wars. Down to the way they shoot this whole opening sequence. It feels very Blade Runner, which is, you know, proto cyberpunk essentially. I have played a little bit of that Cyberpunk 2077 and or even Blade Runner 2049, and this idea of corporations owning large swaths of land or working for the
Right.
company town. It's very much a part of that, that vibe. And then they use this synthy music as he's making his escape later on in this opening sequence, and I just think like, wow, they could not have been aping Blade Runner any harder. But I love those movies, so I think it's like, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Star Wars is always effective to me when it is like putting a fun spin or twist on a style we know. You know, obviously samurais,
Right. Yeah.
westerns, right? But you know, as we and you know these mythological ideas, these kind of movie concepts, right? Like a a heist film like Rogue One, right? In this case, this is like a cyberpunk thriller, and it's
Right.
pretty cool in my opinion. So Andor arrives on a rainy planet and makes his way through a red light district to a brothel. We get the very first shot is these really cool shots of like these lights on a pier / causeway. I just think it was a sign for me. It's a sign that they had a more thoughtful cinematic approach to this show. Now, for some people, it's going to feel a little artsy fartsy. I think perhaps a little up its own butt. But for me, I just think it's like, the way you move a camera and you position the camera and that you kind of capture these unique angles of things that, you wouldn't if you were just standing in a space is always fascinating to me. So totally works for me.
Yeah.
Of
And
course,
this
also,
must be the first Star Wars brothel, is what I wanted to
oh,
say.
right. Well, yeah, I think, it's
I
certainly
don't think
implied.
we've
Like that.
definitely like
Yeah.
seen, like, bars with like dancing in them and stuff. But like I don't think we've ever
We've seen
seen a full blown like sex work
interesting choice of
brothel.
words.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
That's
you
what
said
you
full
say.
blown though. It's just funny.
Oh my God. Shut up. I was like, sex work is the appropriate term. But yeah, we've never seen, I don't think we've seen this.
I don't think so either.
Whatever. Tell me if I'm wrong, people out
No,
there.
we've seen Star Wars strip clubs, but we've never seen Star Wars brothels.
No, yeah. It's like, oh, they're getting a little edgy.
But like the way like they have like those aliens and the people in those like pods on the street and stuff, I just thought that was such a cool visual, and like with the rain and like the neon. Oh, it's really like, for me, this was about 110 times more evocative of a vibe of a location than anything that we saw in Obi-Wan. And I think it's important to say early on that this show was not filmed in the volume. And that is to say, it's not filmed in that with using those giant LCD screens that they used to make The Mandalorian, and that they used to make Book of Boba Fett. And of course, in those shows, they did some on location shooting, and they did some blending of the volume and real world locations and sets. But from my understanding, Tony Gilroy said that they didn't use the volume at all for this show. So everything that you see here is a practical set, or some blending of practical set and CG, or on location and CG. And I think that is really cool. And I think it totally comes through in some. I think we'll see it much more as the show progresses, kind of how that real world feel and grittiness comes through. But even for now, I just thought that even Ferrix as a location, or in this case, Priox Morlana, this kind of red light district, feels very real and lived in. And I loved it. Okay, so Andor meets a woman, a sex worker, and asks about a woman from Kenari. Apparently, she had left us several months ago. He's looking, turns out, for his sister, but doesn't know her name, which I think is really interesting. It's like, oh, you said you were her sister, but you don't know her name. But I guess we later find out, right, through Flashback, that when he last saw his sister, they were speaking a completely different language, and he's even using a different name now. So, I think there is something to say, like, even if he probably knows her original name, or maybe he's forgotten it, by the way, which is also completely possible, that by this age and learning a whole new language, he doesn't remember his sister's name, and that could be tragic. We won't know that. We don't know that yet, but I just find that interesting.
I didn't process it that way. The way I thought he was asking, like, I thought he wasn't sure if it was his sister or not, so he's asking her what the girl's name was, because it could be a different
that's what I
girl
mean.
from Kenari. So I was like, I didn't think it was because he didn't know his sister's name. He was just asking her, like, what name was she going by, like, to try and see if it was her or not. I don't think he knows
anyone else from Kenari. I think that's the like, he's like,
probably
he doesn't
not
know anyone from there. He's hunting down any clue he can find, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, okay, here's a woman from Kenari. Could be anyone, right? He's looking for a sister. What's the name? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I just think he could have said it was was her name blank, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
that's
he
true.
could have got the same answer, which is, sweetie, no one uses their real names here, or whatever. But interesting enough. So he gets harassed by two corporate security officers in the bar. And by the way, I gotta say, first, a couple things. I think that the sex worker, I think her hair is the coolest thing. It's like it's like an afro, but the top half is cut off.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Just a very different look. What I like about the show is that it's showing us Star Wars, but from a completely different angle than we've ever seen before. And like it's not a bunch of stormtroopers and it's not a bunch of Jedi and it's not a bunch rebels or whatever wearing the same nostalgic
No.
uniforms, orange jumpsuits that we've seen. This is like people wearing their regular working clothes, living a quote unquote normal life, and it feels very much like that. The performances in the show, every single one of them, I think, is better than almost any performance we've seen in any of these other Star Wars movies. I mean, or shows, I should say. I mean, obviously outside of kind of like the core performers, like Pedro Pascal and Ewan McGregor and stuff like that, who are obviously putting in great work.
Mhm.
I think that largely speaking, the acting has been fine across the board. I think that the work that the people put in this show puts all those other people to shame. And I don't know why that is exactly. If it's this, like, they get to sit in these real sets and that makes them feel like these people more and that lets them live in these characters more. But I just think it was really great. Like, even so, this woman and then these two corpo like security guards, they barely have any screen time, but they're very captivating. The way that they like engage with Andor in the bar itself. It's like everything about it just feels very real to me. Like the way that they interact doesn't feel like a space fantasy. It's like these are real people. You know what I'm saying? So he gets harassed by. No, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I was gonna say that's how guys actually talk to each other in bars. Don't know
right?
that are trying to pick fights.
I love when he's like, what's so funny? He's like, he literally didn't. I'm like, he didn't even smile. He didn't even. I don't think he giggled. I don't think he's like huffed.
Smirked,
I'm like, I don't think he did anything. They were just literally out to get like. And I have been pulled into fights because of this exact same thing.
Oh
it's
yeah,
just like they're just like, oh no, we are gonna fight you. We decided. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You know. So
yeah,
and I don't recommend it for the record.
Yeah.
So let me I want to double check one thing. Can you say something super quick? I just want to make sure the audio is good here. Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Excellent. Good. All right. Anyway, so he gets harassed by these two corporate security officers in the bar who follow him out of the bar and down the street. And I love the way the shot stays on Andor's face as he's walking away, and we just hear their voices from behind. I just feel like it really creates the exact dynamic that you want, which is that feeling of walking somewhere and all of a sudden you hear someone behind you yelling for you. It's like, oh, it sends like chills down your spine, you know?
Oh, for sure.
I just thought that, and then they stay out of focus even as they like pull a gun on him and stuff. The way he's like, listen, I got money in my pocket. I'm not going to move. Come and get it. Like, I don't want to, exactly. You know what I mean? So I just think maybe that's a little bit colored by our modern day feeling of how police are kind of our post BLM thoughts on police officers,
right?
Or maybe colored a bit by this, but I think what they're showing you is corrupt cops.
Yeah,
right?
It's exactly
But
which is like there's a ton of that in Star Wars. We see it all the time of like them paying officers off, and there's tons of it. That's
how the Empire functions, really. But
pretty much, yeah.
These are like low level. They're not even in the Empire.
No, they're not.
You know
what
I mean? Like,
they're
like mall cops basically, who got a little too much power given to them. So I just think that was really cool. So he ends up headbutting this guy in the face and accidentally killing him, which I thought was super shocking. How did you react to that when when that guy died?
This whole kind of interaction with him, like obviously Cassian has very thick plot armor. Like we know he's not
the thickest, one might say.
We know he's not gonna die. So
we do know he's gonna die. We do know for sure where and when and how.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but so like you're not as like concerned about his character, but I didn't think this scenario was gonna play out the way it actually did.
Yeah, the way that like not only is he shocked that he's dead at all, but the way that the other guy reacts. Again, this is another example of how I think the performances are so good, where he starts like saying like, hey, we'll go in together. It was an accident. It's not a big deal. It just basically begging for his life. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Like making up this whole this whole thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's don't worry, like these are the things we're gonna say, just kind of panicking, and you can feel
Which, by
that
the way, I
panic. Like
like
it's
how
so
they're
true.
making up a story here, and he does that exact same thing with his friend later,
Yeah.
where they make up a little story. I just think it was real. I just the way that they do it is really fun. In
Hmm.
the later scene, we'll get to that, but um, maybe I just like maybe the idea that he kind of picked up this idea that you could just invent a story on the spot with somebody if you had to.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so anyway, he shoots him,
Yeah. I was just
cold
like
blood.
so not expecting that. I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe he'll like
Ah, I knew he was gonna
shoot
shoot
him
him
in
for
the
sure.
leg and run off. I just like I didn't think he was gonna full blown shoot him in the face. Like I was like,
Well,
whoa.
remember he shoots that guy in Rogue One, another spy, right,
I guess, yeah,
in the
I
back.
guess. Fair enough.
So I don't.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, you could make the argument that it's like it's crazy to see Andor. I get the impression that this might be Andor's first murder, though.
Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But hard. I mean, maybe not either. And if it's not, maybe we'll get to see that in flashback in some way. But
Right,
um,
yeah.
he certainly seems like this is the turning point for his life at this exact moment.
Yeah.
That and
This is just
his
part of
being picked up from Kanari.
Yeah, this is just kind of part of the whole in Star Wars too, like about this show being like a little bit grittier, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, Star Wars doesn't show us the good guys killing like
Almost
people who
never.
are
Even
defenseless or people
even
who have
Boba
given up
Fett.
or surrendered. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Notorious
okay,
bounty
yeah.
hunter. Yeah. He's just really there to look mean, right? And then in
Yeah.
this case, yeah, they shoot. I mean, they don't show us the shot in the
No, no, no,
face,
no.
but they cut away. But it's
Yeah.
it's about as gritty as you're gonna get in Star Wars, and I think
Yeah.
that's gritty enough in my opinion. Like a hard PG-13, sure,
Well, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so Andor makes his way back down the causeway, gets in his ship and takes off. One thing I thought was interesting here, little thing I saw on the rewatch, as his ship flies by the camera as it's leaving the planet, the
Mm.
camera shakes a little bit, like it's like actually in the world. I thought that's an interesting idea. That we don't
Oh,
usually see that.
right.
Okay, and then we cut to Ferrix. This is the first time we're seeing this. We get another title card, the Morlani system, free trade sector. So we get the sense that it's close by because it shares the same name as the planet we were just on. The system does, but it's slightly different. It's not a corporation zone; it's a free trade sector. So it's a little different.
Right.
We get a little bit more understanding of that as we go. So we're introduced to our new droid for the first time, B2 Emo, or B2 for short. Yeah, I mean, they knocked it out of the park again. Love B2. No notes. He's so good. He's
I had to make note that it's like, oh yeah, I love how in Star Wars whenever it's like a droid they want you to like this is a character droid. Like he's a main
right,
character. It's like they always give them like a different colored leg or like, you know what I
right.
mean? How they're not
Yep.
like always all put together. It's super funny. They're always
I
a little
also
bit
like.
mismatched.
I like his. I just like his vibe. Everything
Yeah,
about
me
it. Like the
too.
way
Me
he's
too.
got this little spinny section. He's got
Hmm.
wheels, which is obviously always odd when you see wheels in Star Wars. But R2 had wheels, so whatever.
Yeah, why are wheels weird?
Well, you just don't see them. When you see wheels, they're either really tiny or really big,
Yeah, I
right?
guess that's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? Or they're
Yeah.
hovering.
Yeah.
So, I got a hardcore Wall-E vibes. Did you get Wall-E
Yeah,
vibes?
that's
Yeah,
exactly what I got from him for sure.
100%. I don't think that's an accident. There's that one shot of it like cruising through that like junkyard with
Yeah.
this like big thing in the background. I'm like, that's a shot right out of Wall-E. I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm pretty sure they just cut
Yeah.
and pasted that. Anyway,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
like how he can like close all up like a little trash can. He's very cute.
yeah, and like they're kind of boring elements from different droids. I mean, this is unique in the sense that I've never seen a droid look or shape like this, but it does borrow elements from other droids that we've seen.
Oh yeah.
There's no completely unique ideas. The one thing that makes it extra cute, I think, is its stutter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
This
I
little power stutter or whatever it is.
yeah,
It's
it
cute.
reminds me of that droid from episode 9. I try to forget about that movie, but Dio, remember Dio?
Oh yes, Dio.
What?
Yeah.
Don't touch me or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess he's kind of got that same kind of stutter going, and you know what? I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's cute.
Cassian is so he ends up looking for Cassian and finds him sleeping on a ship. So we get our first flashback here. We hear the word casa for the first time. It's his sister speaking to him. Again, this no unknown language. We kind of touched about this already. No adults. So what do you make of that? Why are there no adults here? Real.
I mean, I kind of speculated about this like later on in that they probably died in the mining accident, and that's why
Right.
because when they just say later about how there's a mining accident, yeah, that was kind of because I obviously I clocked that there were no adults, and I was like, that's weird. Why would there just be a bunch of kids in the woods?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, you're obviously like kind of like wondering about okay, where are the adults? But yeah, like later on when they kind of talk about I guess the planet being toxic, it's like
Hmm.
either the adults couldn't handle the planet being toxic, or you
Yeah,
know what I
that's
mean.
interesting. I wonder
But
if the kids are somehow immune,
yeah,
or
maybe if
maybe
they've
the
just
planet
grown
isn't
up with it.
actually toxic and they've just
Hmm.
went like the Empire went and killed a bunch. I mean, I guess that took
Well,
place pre-Empire.
It it
Anyway,
did
yeah.
look like it was though, because those other guys that crashed were all yellow, and I assume that's because the planet was toxic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I don't. But like maybe not to people who actually live there, and maybe all the
Yeah, but also
adults. I
like,
don't know.
what? How's that work then? Because these are humans, and those are
Yeah.
humans, and they just died, and then they're on the ship, and then we see his mom. He meets his quote unquote mom later
Hmm.
on, and they're wearing masks, but they keep taking them off. And that one guy, he's
Yeah.
dead, but he's wearing a mask because a mask is on his face. So it's like it's very confusing. And there's like
Who knows?
greenish yellow smoke coming out of that crashed ship that looks very similar to the color of the faces that they were. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
That
don't
one's
know.
that it is a bit of a mystery. I think it's going to get unwound for us. One of
Yeah,
the
eventually.
one of the theories that I saw online was that it's like a false flag operation that the Republic was committing, under Palpatine's orders, because this was during the Clone Wars. It seems like.
Yeah, but it also seems like on the edge.
It's a
Like
mid rim
I
system.
no, to me, I kind of figured that this seemed like it was like Republic, but bad Republic, not
Well,
good
the
Republic.
people on the ground are wearing separatists badges, so maybe it's
Yeah.
possible that it's like um, uh, they're carrying like a bio hat, a bio
Mm,
agent or something,
yeah,
or
maybe.
something like that. You know what I'm saying? Um, like here's what happened. It's possible that there was an actual mining accident that killed the adults, and
Hmm.
then this ship crash lands, and there's a bio agent that's released, and then that's when the Empire locks it off
Oh,
as
I see.
being
I see.
a toxic thing. I don't know.
Could be.
Just
Yeah, you're right.
different speculating ideas here. It is interesting that we don't know for sure, and it's kind of fun to kind of piece that together. It's nice having a
Yeah.
mystery. And so we see a ship crashing, very beautiful to look at. And we cut back to Ferrex. We meet a friend, Brosso. Love the name Brosso. Cool name. And turns out he was looking for him the night before. Or we find out about a friend, Brosso. We don't meet him yet here. This is still B2 talking. And there's the cute part, pausing for data lag. I love that. Pausing for data
Yeah.
lag. He's like trying to remember something.
So
And then I
cute.
also love how he's like, "Can you lie for me?" He's like, "I think I have enough power to do that. It takes extra
Yeah.
power to lie." And he's like, "You can tell no one where I am and where I'm going or whatever." He's like, "That's two lies."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
so funny.
adorable.
Yeah, it's so good. I think that like, and then he pulls a little piece of scrap out of B2, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
they're doing that thing where like if he's nice to an animal, and droids are essentially
Hmm.
dogs.
Pretty
So
much. Yeah.
yeah, so he was like, oh, he's nice to the droid, so he must be a nice guy,
Yeah.
right? That
Exactly.
classic move.
Only bad guys are mean to droids.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Okay, so just like in any other movie, if someone's mean to a dog, you know they're a bad
Oh,
guy,
yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we get this really cool shot of series of shots of a lively town of Ferrex. This is what I was talking about before. This kind of like lived in real world, people moving around, lots of extras, lots of aliens in costume. Some really cool world building stuff here too. We get this like wall of gloves. I think it's a beautiful shot, kind of like punch cards, kind of like standing for
Yeah.
punch cards.
Like all different colors.
Yeah, and then you get this guy, kind of like these personnel carriers that look like giant like luggage carriers.
Yeah.
Those are kind of cool. It's just like you get this vibe. It's a blue collar town. This is like
Yeah.
this is like Hamilton back in the day or whatever. Like it's like Steel Town basically, right? Like factory workers.
Mhm.
Um, so Andor meets Brosso. We meet him for the first time, and this is where I was saying before, where they come up with this alibi. He needs an alibi for where he was last night, right? And
Right.
I just really enjoyed that. I thought they had really good chemistry. I was kind of like, that's not what happened. Here's actually what happened. And then I like when Brosso kind of like buys in, and he's like, yeah. And then I was offended, so you came here to apologize to me.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, good
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
This is also the first time we get the reference to how his mom's house isn't heated, or like she's like, you can afford to turn the heat on. Like, remind her to do that. And it's referenced like 3 or 4 times in the couple episodes, and we actually see her like breath later on.
Yes.
So it must be like really cold in there. That's interesting. I don't know what they're getting at that. It's either that they're super poor or that there's something else going on. It's unclear.
Yeah.
So we cut back to Milano 1. We get the corporate security headquarters, and this might be my favorite scene of all 3 episodes. This one and another one with the corporate security officers make up my 2 favorite scenes.
Okay.
In my opinion. So this one's chef's kiss. We meet 2 new characters, Chief Hine and Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn.
Mm-hmm.
What a little weasel Cyril
I know.
is, right? Just a little brown noser, right?
Yeah.
And so they discuss the crime that Andor committed, right? And he's like, hey, I wanted to bring this to you before you left because I thought this was really important because 2 people were murdered, right?
Right.
So this is where there's some interesting. I saw a tweet about this, which I thought was very funny. I don't know if I have it handy, but it was basically like people were like, well, he's just doing his job. Like, he's like, people were murdered. He's investigating why are we framing this person as a bad guy? But it's like the tweet was basically like, hey, we already established that bad guys in Star Wars are space Nazis. So if you're gonna use the defense that they're just doing their job, you're not paying attention. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This is kind of like the whole trope of like the gung ho young cop.
Yes.
In
Not
the
disillusioned
town.
yet.
Yeah, in the town where like everybody else is like, ugh, just leave it. Like, who cares? Right.
Right. So you've got this not necessarily corrupt, but at least lackadaisical environment, right? I love it when we get Chief Hine, who's played by Rupert Vansittart, who you might recognize from Game of Thrones. He played Jan Royce. I mean, if you're watching House of Dragon, we just met another Royce on that show. Anyway, great actor. I loved his performance here. Just totally fit the role. And so I love when he lays it out for him. He's like,
Me too.
Listen, he's like, these were 2 bad cops that were in a brothel where they're not supposed to be, in one that's too expensive that they shouldn't be able to afford, drinking something that they're not supposed to drink, and then they ended up probably, he's like, even absolutely nails it. He's like, they probably harassed the wrong person and paid the price.
And paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, this isn't worth our time. They're terrible at their job anyway. Like,
oh, I love when he's like, he's the worst person. He's like one of the worst people I've ever met. Yeah.
I love when he says that. He's like one of the worst people I've ever met, which is like really funny to hear, like a whatever empire or not.
Well, it's like this guy's like he's a bureaucrat, right? Like he's a middle manager, right?
He's just straight up like, that guy sucked. And I don't want to deal with the paperwork on this anyway, because exactly all those things you listed. They weren't supposed to be there. They shouldn't be able to afford that place, and they probably pissed off the wrong person. So.
Right. So it's I just, and he even says like, I'm surprised he didn't die a lot sooner, which I thought was such a good line too. And like the face of Cyril as this is happening is just like pure shock. He's like, he's basically he's being exposed to this mentality for the first time, and he just does not agree with it. He's like, this is wrong. Right?
I also very much love how he like basically chirps Cyril for tailoring his
He's like, did you modify your uniform? He's like, perhaps a little.
And he's like all embarrassed. He's like, and a little bit of tailoring. And it's
like,
he's like,
I love it so
like,
funny.
Snug.
Yeah, because it's like, it fits so well. And he's like, if you put some piping in some pockets,
Yeah.
You don't need extra piping on your uniform. Get
It's
lost,
so
Cyril.
funny. And then yeah, I did notice that later on when you see other people like their uniforms are like baggier and looser and
Yeah.
his is all like it looks like it's too tight. Like it would
It does
like
look like it's
restrict him.
yeah,
Yeah.
like you can't move in that very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's picking
Uh
fashion over
yeah.
how things work. But
So Chief Hine wants to sweep this under the rug.
yeah.
He wants him to come up with a suitable accident report that makes them out to be, died helpful, I think is what he says,
Yeah.
right? Not too heroic. We don't want to we don't want
Yes.
to parade. And says that he's off to a Imperial Regional something or other inspection committee, etc. Sorry, Imperial Regional Command Review, which just sounds like more bureaucracies,
Yeah.
and he's asked to make a report about their crime rates. And again, I just love everything about the way he talks in this. Like everything about it is so cool. He says, minimizing the time the Empire spends thinking about Priox Marwana benefits our superiors and by extension everyone here on Priox inspection security team, which for now includes you. Right? Which is a veiled threat,
Yeah.
And that like, hey, if you don't do this, I will fire you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just love the way he's like, listen, I got to go to this thing. The most important thing about this whole thing, brief. They don't want to hear about us. They don't want to know anything.
No.
Right? They don't need to know about this. Right? It's the last thing that they need to know. So we're just going to pretend it didn't happen and move on with our lives.
Which he basically telling him like, don't make a lot of noise about this. Who cares? Move on.
Yeah.
And he does the complete opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cut to Ferrix. Andor meets with an old friend, Bix, who is played by I don't have her here, but also another great actor because I thought her performances were great. Also, she's like a scrapyard worker.
Yeah,
Adria Arjona is her name. Let's see if I recognize her from anything. She was in Morbius. I didn't see that movie. Anyway. I thought she was great here. And so she's got this kind of like edginess to her that I think
I liked her
makes
a lot.
Andor look kind of sketchy, like he's got like a little bit like a drug addict kind of vibe going
in
this episode. And like you understand why he's obviously super nervous and stuff, but she's like, cool it, man. Like you're going to call too much attention to us basically. So I liked her vibe. So he's looking to sell some contraband to her secret fence, and he wants to speed up the process. He needs money so he can lay low for a while. Makes sense. He has an untraceable NS9 Starpath unit with vector crystals and Imperial seals still intact. I don't know what that means. It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But my understanding is that it basically lets them like use Imperial like space routes and like disguise themselves as an Imperial ship.
That's kind of what I picked up. It's like your codes and all that. That it's just like when you're flying around, you look like you're an Imperial ship. So
it's like a transponder or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So obviously, super valuable thingamajig. She's pissed because she feels like he's been holding out on her, but she's been skimming off the top, which is the classic like criminal partnership. Like we both kind of do our own thing while we work together. Don't worry about it, kind of thing. As long as we're all hunky dory. While they're there, they get interrupted by Bex's new boyfriend, Tim. I love when we get Star Wars names that are just like regular names.
Yeah,
but
and then just add an extra vowel or something to them.
It's so I get the same tickle when I watch Game of Thrones, and it's like Lord Jason.
Yeah,
it's like okay.
Yeah.
So Tim with an extra M is asking about a bid for a Mobani run. Now, this is a fun Easter egg. Mobani is the first place we see in Rogue One. It's where Jyn Erso is locked up on Imperial Detention Center.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, Bix agrees and that she'll reach out to her contact. But as Andor leaves, Tim isn't happy that she's like hanging around with Andor. This is like one of those classic like clingy boyfriend moves.
Yeah, like jealous.
Like, yeah, like I don't like who you're hanging out with.
Yeah.
And like, by the way, Andor's response: find yourself a less complicated woman.
Yeah.
Solid comeback. Right. And good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So anyway, first thoughts on Bix.
Oh yeah, like I liked her a lot. I liked her vibe and yeah, her demeanor and everything. Like I thought she was really good. Like she intrigued me right away. I was like, "Oh, okay, this seems like a really like cool character."
Yeah.
And I like when they don't give like female characters just some kind of like boring bullshit
Like
like
receptionist job or something.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
not just like she's not just like a waitress or like a
Right.
whatever, or
No,
like
no,
some
she's a
other
scrapper. Right. It's
yeah, like
cool.
it's
Yeah.
cool. Like she's a full-blown scrapper and a little bit of a criminal and I like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. She's got an edge. Like I said, I like her
Yeah, she's a
vibe.
little edgy. I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get on our second flashback. The group of kids is getting ready to investigate the crash site. They're putting face paint on, like war paint or camo. It's unclear. It's kind of got this vibe of like, I think we're supposed to feel like it, and they have like these blow dart things later on.
Yeah.
It's supposed to feel like indigenous peoples, I
I
guess,
think
but
so,
it's like,
yeah.
but like they also are wearing like what looks like to be like clothes that the miners used to wear. So it's like, are
Mhm.
they the kids of the miners? Like, if so, why are they all speaking different languages? Or are they literally like, or was there some sort of like genocide and they're the ones that are left and they are
Yeah,
indigenous
yeah.
to that planet or whatever? Like, it's anyway. There's lots to unpack here. We don't have the
Yeah.
time today.
I got the feeling that it was like, kind of the older kids do like hunting, right? So they go out
Right,
and hunt and bring back for the rest of them, right? So and that Cassian's trying to make his way in there, but he's a bit too young still or
right.
whatever.
But the leader's like, no, it's cool. You can come. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So we go back to Mabani. Cyril decides he's going to take on this case, despite what his commander says. And he first starts by looking into Andor's ship, despite some initial pushback. Again, this lackadaisical nature of like, oh, you want me to look into this? It's going to take all night.
Yeah.
Like, or like, he's like, oh, you know how it gets. Like, it's busy. And it's like, well, I don't know which is worse. Like our laziness or the
Mhm.
fact that our corporate borders are unprotected. Like,
Yeah.
lick more boots,
And you
loser.
can tell they all just don't like him. Like they're like, "Oh, this
Yeah.
guy comes in here and thinks he can shape this place up," right? Where they're all
Yeah, it's
just
like
like,
we're all comfortable here, just doing our
yeah,
half-assed work.
yeah, like we're
And
not
yeah,
being bothered. Just fuck out of here.
yeah,
Then you get this go-getter coming in and ruining it
ugh,
all.
yeah. Just like I said, a real brown noser.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
part of the reason why I didn't like him. Like, it's not that he's like
well, that's
one of
100.
those. You know what I mean? It's not that he's like, oh, he's like a super
He's not
mean.
super evil. He's not like twisting his
No,
mustache.
he's
He feels like he's trying to do the right thing, but his motivations are all twisted, I think.
yeah. I was like, you're just one of those. You're just one of those. It's like
Like,
you're the
are you really
guy.
trying to do this because you feel like there's a murder that needs to be solved, or are you doing this because
Yeah,
you
you gotta
feel like
prove
you
yourself.
got to prove yourself, or
Yeah,
you need to show that
exactly.
this is a noble job, or yada yada yada,
Yeah,
whatever.
he's the guy that makes everybody else's job harder and more annoying,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're just like, everyone hates that guy.
No one
Like,
likes that person.
yeah, half effort always. Get out of here.
Right. Work smarter, not harder,
Exactly.
guy. Right. So anyway, he decides he's gonna take this on this case. We cut back to Ferrex. Andor is held up by a guy who owes him money, and we get to see Andor do his classic talk his way out of this problem. And I loved how this scene plays out because it's like at first it starts off like uh, when Han is being harassed for money, you know.
Right,
And he's
right,
like,
yeah.
I'll get your money. Even
Yeah.
even I get stopped sometimes. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's kind of had that vibe to it.
I very much got like, kind of Han Solo owing people money vibes from him
Yeah,
for sure. I'm
and
like,
I love how he's
but
got
yeah,
like,
this
I
seems
love
like
it.
it's a little bit more like gambling though. Like it's not.
Right,
I'm sure Han kind of is too, but with Cassian, it
100%.
seemed like he's that guy that always owes everybody money
Yes,
and like borrows money from some person to pay back somebody else and like bookies and that kind of stuff, right? Like
yeah,
just down on his luck, can't get out of this hole that he's dug himself.
yeah. I mean, I think they paint the picture. This is the classic show don't tell stuff. I mean, they
Mhm.
do earlier in the episode. They have that line where from the droid where he's like, "And your mom said that you're eventually going to find yourself in a position where you can't talk yourself out of it, and she's worried
Yeah.
about you or whatever." And like, and he's like, "Okay, I get it." And then we get to see it in action here, and I like how
Yes.
he knows the muscle guy, and he's like, "You're working for him now." like you're just desperate for work, and
I
he's like,
love that whole interaction.
and then the way he looks, and then when he walks away, and they're like, listen, I'm gonna do us a favor and pretend like this never happened.
Yeah.
And then they like look at each other, and he's like, I don't know. It's like so good.
I loved how that big guy too was just like, he's like, I was just supposed to stand here. Like it's like he wasn't even paid to do anything. It was just to stand there.
Yeah.
It's so
good.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'm friends with this guy too. Like, get out of here. You're not gonna beat me up. Like,
yeah. Are you threatening me? Yeah.
you're
I like
trying to
like
shake me down.
This is like a classic. If you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like Star Wars, which fair enough. There's parts that certainly don't, but I think that actually is more to the show's strength for anything. But this is a classic feels like Star Wars moment.
Oh yeah,
in my
absolutely.
opinion. So,
yeah.
Bix goes for a stroll through town. Tim follows her. He's kind of being a little too nosy, but loses her in the crowd. She goes to pick up some parts from a scrapyard and sneaks into a hiding space with a transmitter in a tower. And this is how she reaches out to her contact. A cool little hiding spot, if you ask me.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I like that shot of her like from above, and she's just inside
super
there.
cool.
Really cool shot.
Yeah. Cut back to Mobani. We're catching. I mean, this show does again. This is what I mean by classic television. This is not spending all our time with one character and then we'll spend an episode with another. This is cutting back and forth, hyper serialized storytelling that can move pretty quick at times, but in general, it's a long, drawn out story. So we're gonna we're seeing the detective work essentially that's going in to finding out who Andor is in the first place. So Cyril meets with the team. They have a lead. They found out that the ship went to Ferrix. So annoyed, he gets them to put out a bulletin. Again, he's fighting this bureaucracy right within his own department. Where they're like, well, have you ever been there? He's like, why would that matter?
Yeah,
and he's like getting all annoyed, but not annoyed in like a thoughtful way, annoyed in like a pissy way. And this is why I think people don't like him. Interesting. My girlfriend mentioned that the reason she didn't like him, American accent, which I thought was funny because we're so used to these Imperials with their British accents and being like, well, they sound evil,
really funny,
right?
Yeah.
So and then we got that like Southern accent guy in Mandalorian who also sounded evil. This is just that American accent that again that kind of like office worker do-gooder annoying person accent. So it's like I thought that was interesting. He's not in the. It would be funny if later on if he like makes because he's the exact right type of person to like quote unquote succeed in the Empire.
Oh,
right?
He absolutely is. Yeah.
So he it'd be funny if he like puts on a fake little accent later on because he feels like he needs it to like fit in or whatever. That'd be interesting.
But I do like this interaction too because I feel like again they're trying to tell him because don't they say something along the lines of like things are just done differently down there? Like you know what I mean?
It's like that's our jurisdiction, isn't it? He's like,
but
yeah, technically it is, right?
Yeah, but even they're like, oh, we don't really go there and do stuff because it's just like it's kind of like those again that old trope of like that neighborhood won't talk to cops, right? Like it's like you're not going to get any info out of those people, so why bother going down there? Like who cares?
Yeah, and I just like. We get a little bit of world building here, which is this idea that this corporation doesn't just own that planet, owns multiple planets in the system. Now, this is kind of like an extension, so they don't have like full control. They technically are under the jurisdiction of these guys, but it's not something that, like they say later on, it's like if they don't like it, they can file a complaint as official review or whatever. It's like, more bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Okay. So we cut to Ferrix. Andor is still hiding out on a ship, which turns out isn't even his. He's switching out the trip log after refueling it, lying about how he's quote unquote leaving the ship better than he found it. Another quote unquote friend of his is annoyed and tells him he's not. He's like he's done with it. No more favors. I'm done with this. Again, painting this kind of picture of kind of how Andor has ended up in this like place, like why how is he treated by his people? He does have friends, but even his friends are a little worried about him and don't necessarily trust him.
But it does start see like it seems like he's running out of luck. He's like he needs to get out of this place because he's running out of favors and he's kind of running out of friends almost. Like, he's got his few like two good ones, but everybody else is sort of fed up with him, right? So they're just like, I'm not doing stuff for you anymore. Like get out of here.
You're putting too much like this is too much like risk for me. Like it's not worth it. If you're not even gonna like, how are you helping me here? You're not. You're just putting me in trouble. So I can understand that. So another flashback. Andor says goodbye to his sister. which I find interesting the way that this plays out, because he like hops out of his little cabin thing and he's like about to leave, and then his sister has to like run after him and be like, "Hey, are you not going to say goodbye?"
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it's probably the last time he sees her,
Yeah.
right? And well, it certainly is the last time he sees her, because he's taken from the planet after that.
Right.
And he's, I mean, assuming he remembers all this so clearly, which it seems like he is because he's like dreaming about it. He's got to feel guilty about this, because he almost walked out on his. This is one of those things where it's like you never know when it's the last time you're going to see somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
like, what if you the last time you saw your parents, you were fighting with them, and then it's like you would feel guilty about that for the rest of your life.
Oh, of
So
course.
now,
Yeah.
so I just find like that's a really interesting character motivation for him, and just so subtly done here. Well done, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's episode 1. I think pretty good, but not the best one. I think it improves as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have lots to cover. Luckily, we've already met a lot of these characters now, so we can just
Yeah.
cruise through the second episode. So the second episode's called "That Would Be Me," which I guess is implying that they put out this bulletin. Which, by the way, I didn't mention before. Cyril insists that they put out a bulletin that they're looking for a Canary male and seeking for questioning, right?
Right. Right.
And they set up a little desk so that they can, take the calls or whatever that are coming in, etc. So, this bulletin is out, and it's kind of like making waves, and Andor being the kind of titular character, obviously, kind of, unless you have other reasoning for why that might be the title. I can't think of one.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we start with Flashback here. So we ended with the last episode of Flashback. We start with Flashback. The Canary kids are making their way towards the crashed ship. They pass an abandoned pit, mine pit. Absolutely massive, beautiful.
Yeah.
Shot,
I was just gonna
I
say
think.
that was
Yeah.
such a beautiful shot. Like, just so cool.
I'm gonna be in Australia, obviously, for work, and I'm expected to. I'll probably see some of these mines. I hear that they're unbelievably massive. Like I can't
cool.
really even wrap my head around. It's like I have the Grand Canyon. It's kind of like that, but I guess
Yeah.
like man-made. It's pretty crazy to think about. It takes hours to get to the bottom, apparently.
Yeah. Huh.
No, interesting. So, where were we? Back on Ferrex, a guy with, I guess, okay, so this is, we'll just pause here for a quick second. This mine is abandoned. We see all the mining equipment is like
it's all
rusting and
broken.
falling apart and broken.
Mhm.
Not really any clues here, but it is interesting to see that, like, how big the mining operation really was. Like, it wasn't just something that quickly got started and shut down. Like, it was established,
Right.
Okay, so Ferrex, a guy with hammers, plays a giant bell. Alarm clock? Shift bell? Question mark. I thought that was really cool. It's just one of those
liked it.
like,
I thought
funky
it was really
things.
Cool.
I liked how he like really liked his job, seemingly. Where he's just like, he like does this little pause and then is like, and go. I thought that was cool. We get a beautiful shot of a sunset over this tower. It's not clear to me if that tower is real. I think it might be, but it might be also that the base of the tower is real, and then the rest is CG, and then they did they like blue screened the top of it or something.
Right.
I don't know. I'm actually very curious to know how they did that, of all things. So we see these shots of people getting off shift. This is kind of like, hey, it's the whistle. Everyone heading home, hitting the bars. You know what I'm saying? And I just thought that it just, again, this clear vibe of this blue collar town, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's
exactly.
gross and dirty and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Bex is reading a monitor. Tim interrupts her to hit on her, basically.
Yeah.
And she takes off, but he's skeptical and looks into what she was reading. And it's the report or the bulletin that they put out, which says, and again, rare. I don't think that this might be this might be a Star Wars first. I don't know for sure, but on-screen translation of the Star Wars text is something I don't think we've ever. I don't think we've ever seen that before. And kind of like they do it in that modern way, like they're reading a text message,
Right. Yes.
That was like popularized by House of Cards. So, he's reading this bulletin. Pre-More authority seeking Canary male resident of Ferric for questioning. Citizens with any information, please contact the Priox Morlana Security HQ without delay. And then it highlights Canary Mail and without delay.
Without delay, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Then you see Tim's gears kind of turning in his head, and you're like, "Don't you do it, you son of a bitch!"
Such a dick.
Well, I think it's like I think his heart's in the right place too, which is like, this is guy's bad news. He's obviously done something that he shouldn't have. Here's an opportunity for me to like get him off the board. You know, like
I don't know. I think he's just jealous, and he's just like, fuck that guy. He's trying to get with my girl. I'm gonna tell on him.
Yeah, but like I get the like the impression is that like Bix and Andor have known each other like longer than Tim.
Right. Yeah.
Bix,
but he probably thinks that there's some like underlying thing there, right? Like.
Yeah, but again, this is kind of one of those things where like lessons in communication, I guess.
Well,
like,
yes.
But she's doing shady stuff, so she doesn't want to tell her.
She keeps telling him she's doing errands.
Right. Yeah, I got errands to run. And
every time it's like errands.
You don't have anything better to say? They got nothing more specific you want to get? But like, in that scene, she's like, I thought we agreed we're only going to do this once a week, right? Like she's trying to take it slow, and he isn't feeling that, you know?
Yeah.
I've certainly been there, so I can understand that. But like, you know, I feel for the guy, but he's going about it all the wrong way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a dick. Long story short. And so Andor heads home, and this is the first time we see his mom, Marva Andor. This is played by a lady who's from Harry Potter, I believe. Putting in a pretty good performance here. Yeah.
Huh.
And so her name is Marva Andor. This is presumably where Cassian gets his name from, right? She kind of adopts him or whatever, or forges documents that he's her son, right?
Right.
You get the impression that, you know, that guy that they were with in the flashbacks is dead. I think it's implied that he was hanged, right?
Right.
Though we don't know for sure. So she's got a real tragic story. I'm excited to see if we see more of it. I assume we will. But for the sake of the show, we're just going to call her Mom because it's easier.
Yeah.
Marva Mom. And so she's worried about him, but he's also this whole episode, a lot of lying through the teeth, right? He's doing his whole thing like, oh yeah, you know, I would have come home last night, but he's like trying to like weave in his made up story that he made with his buddy, right, into this.
Right.
Like, yeah, but I crashed at my buddy's place, and I was over on the other side of town, so I just figured I'd stay there. And I've been trying to get home all day. It's just been really hard, right? So he does come off as very believable when he does that stuff, right? I think there's a reason he gets by as being someone who can talk his way out of problems, right?
Right. Yeah.
So she knows about the bulletin, and then I think this scene is really good. One of my favorites, where she starts grilling him about who he told that he was born on Canary, right? And I love how he's like, "Well, you told people too." He's like, "All the people I know are dead." he's like, I think that I find that hard to believe, basically, right? But it all ended up like, so it's this classic like parent like child kind of dynamic where she's frustrated at him for making mistakes, and despite some of those being her own, and then it kind of devolves down into like, hey, listen, I messed up, and you know, I'm gonna need help, right? So I think it's very sweet at the end. Andor meets with Bix at a bar. So I think we should just pause here quickly to mention this. Now the show is moving at a very fast pace.
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
and the actual, and from, by the way, I mean not from a thematically, it's still a slow burn, but like the show itself is literally like cutting quick. These scenes are not long, and we, from a timeline perspective, we're only not even 48 hours into the whole length of the story. I think the first 3 episodes cover 2 days, basically, not even 2 full days. So here we are. He's committed the night of, before, you know, the opening scene. He commits the murder. The next day, he's looking to sell that device so he can lay low.
So he can leave,
And now here's day 2, and he's like, you know what? Now that he knows about this bulletin, he's like, screw it. I will sell this thing to you that he said he wasn't going to do before, right? I just need to get out of here. and Bix is like, well, no, the buyer's already on the way, so like there's nothing we can do. He'll be here in the morning.
Right.
Meanwhile, sketchy ass Tim hanging out behind the bar, like basically spying on them and drinking, right? And so he's like, oh man, he's like, now he's putting pieces together. He's like, this guy's clearly the guy, right? He's hanging out with my girl. Bad news. I'm super jealous, and I'm gonna get him off the board here. So he's drunk, so he's making bad decisions.
Oh yeah,
right?
Because he sees that like a very small interaction where Cassian puts his hand on
her hand,
Bix's.
But he doesn't see when she removes it.
But she removes it like a second later, right? So it's that whole thing where it's like,
he's like, I knew it.
Miscommunication. He's like, oh yeah, okay, there's something going on between them, and that's why she's not moving faster with me and all that other stuff, right? So
yeah. She's playing the field. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
So he's mad, he's jealous, he's drunk, so he goes and makes a terrible decision and goes to a really cool looking sci-fi phone booth and calls the Preox Morlana authorities and rats them out.
You know what has never worked in a relationship? Calling the cops on your significant other's friend that they're trying to help.
Friend? Yeah. Hey, he's got to stop hanging out with this guy. He's doing too much drugs. And then he's around one day and you call the cops on him as he's doing drugs. That's not a good call. Don't do that. That's you're not going to earn anyone's favor doing that. No. I don't know how it happened. They must have just been driving by and thought they were probably smoking crack in there or something. And I'm gonna, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to work out for you, man. Okay. So back on Morlana, they get Andor's name and image, presumably from Tim, and they pull his record. It says it's born on Fest, which is another planet I don't think I've heard of before. The woman, which we don't see, this is, I think, part of the kind of subtle storytelling, which I do appreciate. It's more adult, it's less on the nose, and again, appreciated from my perspective. While they're talking about this, he's like, "Oh, we have a suspect." It's like they're kind of skeptical about how, like, we don't know. And then we see the woman from the brothel is there, but she doesn't say anything. She's just in the background, and she's not even fully in focus. But because of her very super distinct haircut, we know who she is.
Yes,
And so she probably fingers him right there. So that's the guy, right? So I think I thought that was pretty cool. And then we get back to Ferris. Tim is visited by Bix at his house. I thought this was so cool. So she says that she couldn't sleep. She's surprised because he had blown her off and he thought she was out with Andor. And he's like, "Can I get you a drink?" And he's super awkward too. He's like, "Yeah, I'm here." He's like trying to play it cool. And he's like, "You know what? Actually, you know what? No, I do want you to stay."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Can I get you a drink?" He's like, "No, I've had enough," which I thought was an interesting line. And he's like, I liked how his reaction to it was kind of like, "Oh, I wonder what that means." Right?
Yeah.
And then she takes off her shirt and then they make out. I guess a sex scene is implied, which again, this level of like adult content, quote unquote, right, is like of like her taking off her shirt, her not having pants on in the morning,
right? It's
all this stuff is very much more risque than we're used to in Star Wars.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
What's the other? Okay, is there another Star Wars first, or we already touched on it? The first one.
What was I thinking? It was.
You said there was one was the brothel. You said there was another one.
I don't know. I can't remember now.
Okay.
I think it might have just been the brothel and then seeing a good guy shoot a guy in the face.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's just what I mean about it, like being a little bit grittier. Is like, oh, okay, you're getting a little bit more of that, like, darker kind of whatever.
I was surprised they didn't just go full on like, hey, we're gonna pull this makeout sesh and they're gonna fall onto the bed, and that's even more implied, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't even go that far. So I did. You know what?
No.
A little disappointed. You could have gone the full way. You know, not a full sex scene. I'm saying, but like it could have at least implied it a little stronger. You know, because
I think it was.
If you're gonna imply it a little bit. You know, make the message clear. You know. Anyway. Star Wars is for kids, everyone. Everyone relax, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so Morlana, back on Morlana 1. This is my second favorite scene, I think, of all these three, of all the 3 episodes. These scenes where we're watching Cyril try to navigate the bureaucracy of this thing, just echoes of the Empire and all this. I just find the world building here to be so fascinating. And then we get to meet Sergeant Mosk, and I love this guy. He's so funny. I love him. His kind of like military do-gooder brown. He's
Yeah.
also a brown noser, so they kind of like fit together like that.
Yeah.
I love when he's like dereliction of duty, sir. He's like, you're right. That is totally what it is, right?
Yeah.
Right? He's like, finally, someone who understands me.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like, God, you're both losers. Like,
Right. So he's like, I'm sorry to wake you up in the middle of the night, but we have a dangerous suspect on the move, right? He's like, totally understandable. So by the way, I love his like Scottish accent here.
yeah.
I just
do
think
like it
it
too.
all totally, it's just perfect casting.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'll just cut to this right now because we're talking about how much I love Mosk. In the third episode, when they think that they got him with the speeder, and they look at
Yes.
each other, and he's got this like little smile on his face.
Yeah.
Absolutely hilarious.
So funny.
It's literally, there's also a moment later where he's like, we're completely surrounded or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're everywhere. And
Yeah.
it's like, holy shit, that's the funny shit. That's
Oh,
good
yeah.
stuff. That's
And
some
they're just
good
kind of
dark
like,
humor.
it's like that, kind of like, like the bumbling stormtroopers that can't
Yes.
hit anything, but this is like the same thing where it's just like,
Mhm.
yeah, you guys are idiots. Like the head guy, what was he? I don't know what they called him.
Cyril or Inspector General or
Yeah,
whatever his name is. Yeah.
he told you to just sweep it under the rug, and you did the complete opposite.
Right.
Like you
And
blew everything up.
the moment when you actually you see the moment when he decides he's gonna go
Yeah.
against his commander's officer. He's standing outside that door, and and this is in episode 1, and then there's like those 2 other officers who walk by, and they're like looking good or whatever, like clearly making fun of him.
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, thank you or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's kind of sad. You almost feel bad for the guy, but then you're like, you get this moment where he's like, know what? No, I'm gonna do the right thing, is what he's
Yeah,
going through his
yeah.
head. And then he walks in and treats that other guy like shit. So
Yeah.
this is the old, the bullied become the
Yes.
bullies
Yes,
old move here. So he meets with Sergeant Mosk, and I wish I could just repeat all of his lines of dialogue here about how he's like, how many people would you think? He's like, at least 12 people for sure. We're gonna need 12. And it's like, well, they're moving fast. He's like, yeah, tempo. You're gonna need tempo. That's important. I also like how he's like, there's nothing better than officers in the field, and a distinct and strong sense of purpose. Nothing
Yeah.
beats that. And it's like, oh my god, you are a freaking loser. You just live for this job. Like, what is you not have a personal life? Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
So, he wants to pull 12 guys together, and they're going to go after Andor fast, right? And he makes this line, which is in the trailer, and I just think it's so good. I'll repeat it here. He's like, I always felt we need a stronger hand with these affiliated planets. By the way, talking about this idea of this kind of system that they control.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, I think we need a firmer hand. Pockets are fermenting. The way he says pockets are fermenting is like so just like evocative. I just really think it's cool. So I thought that was and again, they used that in the trailer because I think they also knew that was really cool. So he also says corporate tactical forces are the Empire's first line of defense, and the best way to keep the blade sharp is to use it. This is the definition of a fascist. These are people who believe in strong force used to control the populace, and that
yes.
as long as the trains are running on time and things are running smoothly, the ends justify the means. So, in Cyril's mind, he's kind of like he's like one of these people that can be easily radicalized, where again he feels like his heart's in the right place, but now he's gotten this little taste of power of how things are supposed to work. When later on when he when they barge into the mom's home, and he's like, shut her up or whatever, it feels like things are getting out of hand for him so quickly and spiraling out of control, and he doesn't know how to handle it. But he, at the same time, it does seem like he is like, okay, if I'm loud and angry, I can make things happen.
Right.
Which I need things to happen in a certain way, so that's going to work for me. I just think that's watching it happen in real time is very fascinating. So they decide that they're going to head out back to Ferrix. Andor's mom is worried as Andor picks up the Imperial part from from some old ship and wreckage. We see her like thinking about Andor, and he's like going through an old ship. In some of the recap videos and stuff I watched, it looks like this ship is the same ship he was like
Yeah.
rescued on,
I
but
picked
like
that
all
up because
stripped.
it's
Yeah,
the same like compartment that they show
yeah.
like later. Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I didn't pick
Yeah.
that up the
No.
first time I watched it. And then he pulls out this device, and it's really cool looking. It's got that black glossy
Yeah.
Death Star tech look to it. Very much a fan of like the way that they have like the Imperial emblem and like stamped on it and stuff. I just thought it was really cool. And he also has a really cool blaster. The way that like the front little like thing like spins before he shoots, very cool.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. It's kind of like a revolver, but instead of like the back part
Okay.
spinning, it's like the barrel spins.
Oh, like the barrel at the front. Right. Okay, cool.
Okay, so this is him essentially picking up that valuable part he was talking about before. So we get another flashback. This is the kids arriving at the crash site. Yellow gas. That's it. Over to Barracks. We meet Stellan Skarsgård's character. Obviously, big fan of Stellan Skarsgård. Awesome actor. Dr. Selvig from the Avengers movies, and Thor, etc. Just all the Skarsgårds are great, but Stellan might be my favorite.
Yeah,
he might be my favorite. I would say. I mean, I just can't think. He always kind of plays a similar role, but the way he does it, it's just so effortless and it feels so believable. I love it. I just think it's so cool. So we meet him for the first time, and he is on his ship. He's talking to his like nav computer, and it's like has to land over far away from town for safety reasons. And then we get some cool shots after he lands of like through the quad knocks, classic Star Wars shot of the town. I just think the effects in the show are very good. So
they are, yeah.
So after that, we go back to the town. Another alarm bell. This time in the morning. It's like they all wake up at the same alarm clock, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like at dawn too. It's like early. Bix wakes to see Tim didn't sleep all night. So this is where I think Tim gets a little bit of nuance where he didn't get it before, which is that he clearly feels regret over
like
what he did.
Yeah, he feels guilty for sure.
Yeah, he's like, I shouldn't have done that. He's been thinking about it all night. He's slept with the guy's friend and ratted him out at the same time, and he doesn't know how. Like he's having a hard time living with himself.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because I think he's kind of putting together that he was obviously wrong about their relationship too. Like it's like, oh fuck, he's like, she came home to me. Like it's not,
right.
Yeah.
Like I made a mistake, and I realize that now, but it's too late for me to change it.
Yep.
She asked for some calf, which of course is the coffee equivalent in Star Wars. I know that's been referenced a lot of times in books and whatnot. This might be the first time it's been referenced in live action. So
that's I think the first time I've heard it. I don't know if I liked it or not. I was like, I don't know, it's fine. But
you've heard it a million other times in a million other places, but the use in live action felt weird to you?
No, I don't think I've really like picked up on it in other mediums. Okay. It's just like, I don't know. I just find that's like a really weird thing to put into Star Wars. Like I know that coffee's not a weird thing to put in Star Wars, but I don't know.
But it's not coffee, it's calf.
Yeah. I was like, it's so like close, but not. I don't know. I don't know why. I didn't really like it.
Yeah, it's like when you call a bathroom a refresher. It's like, it's like, I know we all know what you're talking about, but it is. I like it. I think it's interesting world building. I like it's fun. Okay, so she's got more errands to run this morning, right? They're both a little suspicious of each other. She seems like she's like, he's acting weird. What's going on here, right? And he's like, what's she up to, right? So I just think that's an interesting dynamic in and of itself. Andor is working with B2. He gives him some comms. I was a little confused about this at first, but here's what's actually happening. He has money stashed away. He's going to stash away some money for his mom.
Right, yes.
When he sells the device, right? And his goal will be to take it to her himself, but if he can't, he wants him to go get it.
Yes,
the droid to go get it, and he needs to be able to tell him where it is, so that's where the comm device is
right.
needed. So that's what that is. I found it was confusing at first, for me anyway. So his mom is looking for B2 because he's not at home, and instead finds Andor's old childhood room and some childhood items, a Bantha toy, and that old blow dart stick thing. again, this is one of those moments where like, okay, it's like she's clearly has been with him for a long time, very
Right,
connected.
yeah.
One of those kind of like parent moments where they're looking at their kids' old stuff and it's like, oh, my heart breaks, you know. Then we flash back because we saw the dart stick thing. We flash back and there appears, this is where we see them in use. So we're like, what is that thing? Well, we'll show you. There appears to be some dead bodies on the ground as the kids approach the ship, which didn't seem to be there the last flashback, so that's a little odd, but whatever. They're wearing gas masks, but their skin is all yellow and they look dead. So, and again, to be clear, they're wearing separatist patches here, so they appear to be
yeah.
part of the separatists.
I don't know why I thought they were Empire patches. I guess they look very similar.
They all look they're all pretty close.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they all look dead, but as the leader is approaching, one wakes up and just immediately shoots her in the back.
Yeah.
This is how you know they're bad guys.
What the hell?
Right?
Yeah. And like she's very obviously a child. Like
not
a full
clearly not a threat either. Like
no.
She's clearing a stick, not a gun or whatever, you know.
Okay.
So.
Terrible.
Yeah. So then he gets blow darted the shit out of, like just completely. It's like that scene from Ace Ventura 2, When Nature Calls. Are you familiar with the scene?
I'm not.
It's so funny. It's one of my favorites. So he's getting shot with blow darts and he starts to run, but his like some of his limbs start to like go numb. Right. So his like arms are like, this is classic Jim Carrey stuff. So his arms are like flapping behind him and he's like jumping over logs and stuff and his like legs and arms are all flapping and he's like, and then he gets hit by another and he's like, 6 is too many. He passes out or whatever. It's so fun. It's so funny. It's one of my favorite scenes in that movie. By the way, hot take, Ace Ventura 2 is better than Ace Ventura 1. It's funnier in every way.
It's hard for me to watch Jim Carrey movies. Not a big fan.
Oh, that's so sad for you.
It's just too much with his face.
Yeah, it's just nothing like him.
Yeah.
Anyway. So that's what this guy, he just is the 14 or whatever how many he took. There's too many. So I'm clear if he's dead or knocked out.
I assume they're like poison, those things.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I assume. And then, okay, where were we? They blow dart this guy. The other kids pick up their fallen leader, but Andor stays behind. He's like, he's like, what's going on in the ship?
Yeah. So,
cut back to Ferrex. Andor meets up with a guy. This is that scene I mentioned at the very beginning of the show. He seems to like he's a courier, perhaps, and there's some sort of transportation industry of some kind.
Right. Yeah.
I like their high vis, by the way, very funny. And they're looking up. They just happen to be looking up what Canary is, which I think again it's like very convenient, but it totally works for the show, and I think it's very fun.
It's fine.
He's like, see, he didn't know what it was either. I just think it like felt very real. There's the way he says it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Everyone seems to say that to everyone else in this show so far. Yeah. Everyone hasn't seen everyone else in a while. That seems to be how it works for some reason. Small town, they all know each other, but they're not all like friends.
Right.
Right. They do favors for each other for money. So that's how it works, I guess, in this type of like, blue collar environment. So he's looking for a ride off a planet. But this is what we learned about Canary. Mid-rim planet, abandoned after Imperial mining disaster. Now, remember, this is the official statement on this. So how much this is real or not is unclear. Imperial mining disaster. We know there was something to do with mining. Abandoned and considered toxic Imperial prohibition. Right.
Right.
So, take that for what it's worth. Grain of salt with that one.
Right.
Again, this would encourage you to rewatch the scene and look at Andor's face as they're talking about Canary. Andor wants a ride to Tasser same day. Never heard of that place either. They barter over the price. I love how this goes. He's like, give me a real price. He's like 900. He's like, you want discretion and speed. That's an expensive combo. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's fair. So he's like, okay. He's like 500. He's like, man, that's not going to cut it. He's like, we'll split the difference. I'll do 700, and that's my floor. I'm like, okay, right. I like the little quick bartering. It's fun.
Oh yeah.
And I think our credits are essentially equal to dollars, right? We're saying like $700. Are we supposed to feel like those values are equivalent? because
I'd
the
say
later the
around
device
there,
is
yeah.
40 grand, right? He's saying I'll give you this for
Right.
40,000 credits.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that has to be like an equivalent number. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds about right. I don't know. There's one whole scene about like the droids are trying to buy like some fruit at one point,
Right.
and they keep like upping the price, and it's like, oh, it's actually it's a 14 credits for 4, so it's like,
Right. Okay.
yeah. So I assume they're around like $1 a piece,
Okay. All right.
a,
Yeah. Fair enough.
American or yeah, whatever
Yeah,
American
like
dollar kind of
yeah,
thing.
I think that's fair, like close to USD. It's not like yen where
Yeah.
it's like
No.
14,000 for
No. No.
$1
No.
or
No.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Meanwhile, we see this weird transport ship. Pretty cool, like pyramid shape thing that's like a carrier basically for these like essentially troop transports.
Yeah, I
I'm
liked when it just popped in and then they all drop out
Yes.
of it. It
Yeah,
was really
so cool. I love new ships.
Mhm.
Love these kind of like these proto troop transports. They kind of look like the light aerial transports, the LATs from the Clone
Yes.
Wars, and they kind of look like cross between that and what would become the Imperial troop transport, which kind of is
Right.
ugly in my opinion. The Imperial troop transport's ugly, but anyway, I just like new ships. Rogue One introduced a lot of cool new ships, and this is one was pretty cool too. Anyway, they're getting ready for this like mission that they're going on, and this is another great scene. It's just so fun. It's just hilarious to me, but also fascinating. So there's 3 teams. Mosk is prepping the men, and he's kind of got this like bravado about him, right? And he's like, "We're gonna do it this way, pincer movement. We're all gonna stay in contact. Sounds good." And he talks about there may be some local resistance who may be less than enthused with our presence, right? Talking about kind of what you said
Right.
before. This neighborhood
Yes.
does not take kindly to authority, you know.
Yes.
So then Mosk is like, "Okay, I've done my part. Floor's yours, Captain," or whatever.
Yeah.
and then maybe the worst speech
Oh, it's
ever
so
of all time.
awkward.
He's like, "Excuse me, hello, is this thing on? Hello,
Yeah.
um, there comes a time when the cost of doing nothing, and then no one's paying attention. A guy
Yeah.
literally yawns. I just like so. I think we're probably going to see this character kind of like move up the ranks and become a part of the
Probably,
Empire
yeah.
and maybe part
Yeah.
of the ISB and all that kind of stuff. But and it will be kind of fun and fascinating to watch kind of our villain
Origin
kind
story.
of origin and like
Yeah.
become this kind of like big bad while we also
Oh, for
watch Andor
sure.
grow into himself. I think that's a kind of a fun dynamic.
I
But
feel like we're for sure gonna get some kind of story about this is where he starts like hating like any sort of like resistance or
right,
rebellion or anything like that,
right.
right? And then he's become one of those like I don't know, like not
Diehards, the
like yeah, those diehards that are like
dyed in the
so
wool. Yeah.
focused on trying to like go after these rebels all the
Right, because
time.
they're
So
dangerous and they're hurting people, and
yes,
it's my,
exactly.
the empire, they're trying to hurt the empire. The empire's just trying to help people,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly,
So like,
exactly.
yeah, and they hurt me and they embarrassed me, and that's the worst
Yes,
part, right?
yes, yeah. As soon as that
So,
ego's bruised, it's yeah.
oh yeah, so I just thought that was a brilliant portrayal of that whole thing. And then, by the way, if you watch Mosk's face while he's doing the speech is priceless also. He is like, I don't know if he's trying to hold back laughter necessarily, but he's just like clearly embarrassed for him, which I
Yeah.
think is funny. And then and then he starts the clap because no one else is clapping, and then he's like, "Well said, sir.
Yeah.
Very inspiring."
Yeah. It's like that secondhand embarrassment, right? Like,
Oh, right.
yeah.
But again, brown noser, so he can't admit
Yeah.
that he's like, maybe not your best work, right? Okay, then we get back to Ferrex. Luthen is waiting on a bus with an old man. This is very cute. This guy's just like a regular, just a sales guy, business
Yeah.
guy, and he's like, hey, I've been doing this so long that now they're charging us to park and they're charging
Yeah.
us for transport, and we're just trying to do business. They're getting us from both ends, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought it just very reminded me of that a little bit, like that guy from Obi-Wan who turned out to be a bootlicker. But
Yes.
but I don't get the impression that this guy was a bootlicker.
No, he
Yeah,
just seemed like that, like,
right.
cute old dude on the bus that chit
Yeah,
chats with people. Yeah.
right. And he's like, Well, it's kind of more like a plane ride because they talk about how they're kind of like stacked up and they can't get into port or whatever.
Yes,
And
yeah.
he's like, and there's that line where it's like, you never know who you're talking to these days. And I think that one's pretty like
Oh,
pointed,
yeah. Oh,
right?
of
I think
course it
that's
is.
interesting. And then the line, you know what they say? If you can't find it here, it's not worth finding. And then you cut to Andor walking through that scrapyard, and it's a really cool tracking shot.
Mhm.
Before the end of the cut to the end of the episode. This is where they start really kind of like hammering home these cross cuts start getting really pointed, and I think it actually works. I think it's really cool and clever.
Oh,
This
yeah.
idea of using the previous scene to provide context to the next scene, even though when
Yes.
they're clearly completely separated or different times or different contexts even. I think it's something that kind of that didn't necessarily start in comic books, but it may have for all I know. And The Watchmen, which is obviously one of the all-time best, would do this where they would say something in one panel, right?
Right.
And then it would cut to another panel, and that phrase, which they're not talking about the thing in the next panel, but it would be
Right.
clearly that they're showing something or saying something about that
Yes.
next thing.
Like,
So
kind of when they do that thing where, like, you see it's almost like a narration, and the words from the first panel
right, they
are in
bleed
the
over to the next
artwork.
one.
Yeah, bleed
Yeah,
over into the next one,
yeah.
so it's like, yes, this is what they're talking about.
I think it's very. It can sometimes be a little too on the nose.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But I do think it's clever and smart, and I think when it's well done, I think it feels satisfying. So okay, that's episode 2. So far 1 or 2. Which one do you prefer?
I'd say the second one for sure.
Okay,
Out of those, it's yeah. Like I said, when I was first watching them, the first two to me kind of relatively blend together, and then the third
sure.
one for me is
That one
where it
feels
was
sure.
that kind of got my attention more, and I was like, oh, okay, like I care more about what's happening next. And
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean? If I
the
were to
stakes
just
are
watch
set.
episode one, like we said, it would have been like I wouldn't have really cared. Like there was
Right,
no cliffhanger. There's no like, oh, I wonder what's next. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. Like I guess
right,
we're just
and
gonna
like
keep chugging along.
we haven't really got to the political intrigue, which I think is
Right.
clearly what the Tony Gilroy's strong suit is, you know?
Hmm.
And so right now we're doing kind of like spy thriller type stuff. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
fine, it works. But we're going to start getting into the politics of stuff, and then we're really going to start being able to sink our teeth in and get real juicy. But
Right.
and this, now that we've kind of laid the groundwork here, episode 3 is where it's called Reckoning, right? I
Hmm.
think for obvious reasons, because things are coming home to roost for Andor here. And it feels like it has real momentum by this point, and again, because of the way it's all kind of one over kind of 48 hours, I think we pick up basically right after the end of episode 2, and shit's real, right? So we start with a flashback
Right.
again, shot of Andor entering the crashed ship. Love this shot of like down this octagonal tube. Very
Hmm.
reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a shot that's very similar to that. Of course, in that movie, of course, they rotate the camera and things kind of turn and stuff. It's very cool.
Hmm.
If you've never seen 2001, I would
I
highly
have
recommend
not.
it. It's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Is that the
It's
one
so
about the
cool.
monkeys
Yes,
and the
but
obelisk?
not yes, but it's
Yeah.
not just those things. To be clear,
I don't
and
know,
it was filmed in the 70s, and I think it's this. You can't overstate how impressive what they were able to
Gotcha.
accomplish from the 70s. Like, it looks great now today
Mhm.
still. I just think it's amazing. So I got the chance to see it in theaters as part of like a anniversary. I'm hoping to see Jaws if it's still in theaters. I want to see the Jaws 3D thing because I've never seen Jaws, despite the Jaws poster
Oh.
behind me. I'm a poser.
Like ever?
Yeah, I've never seen it.
That's insane.
You
Okay.
can't make fun of me for not seeing
I
2001.
can if you have a poster on your wall. I don't have 2001: A Space Odyssey poster
Yeah, no,
on
fair
my
enough.
wall.
It's just one of the coolest posters of all time. The Jaws poster is
Yeah,
maybe
it
one of
is
the
great.
best
It's
posters
iconic.
ever. Yeah, so come on.
That's
I can
that's
just like it for
insane.
the poster. I just like the poster, but I do want to see the movie, obviously. So anyway, but luckily no one listens to this, so no one will know that I am a poser.
I'm gonna tell Jeremy immediately
Yeah.
on our
No,
next
Jeremy knows.
film
Jeremy
club
knows.
and see what he has to say.
Jeremy knows. He's like, he'll just be like, I know, I'm just disappointed. Okay, so we see more bodies with yellow faces. These ones are in the ship, so it's kind of interesting. It's like, what, like, is it because the hatch opened, or why? And why are these people dead, but not the scrappers who are there?
Yeah.
It's unclear to me. So Andor sees his reflection in the shiny material gadgets on the ship and gets mad and smashes stuff. What's your reading on why he gets mad from seeing his reflection?
I wasn't too sure about that. Like I'm assuming he's never seen his own reflection. And yeah, I don't know, just maybe overwhelming or something, or maybe he looks like a parent and that's kind of upsetting him. I don't
Or
know.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe he hasn't seen his own reflection in a long time, or maybe he's
yeah.
never seen his own reflection before.
That's what I mean. I
Um,
was like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't. That's an interesting one. I think it to me it reads as like being mad at his current situation. That
Yeah, like usually when they show, I don't know, anytime they show somebody like smashing their reflection, it's usually some kind of like psychological
yeah, it's like
nuance
self.
of like, oh, they're mad at themselves, they hate
Yeah,
themselves. Like
right.
it's
But I
something
think
about
it's more
that.
like
But I'm
he's
like,
mad that he has to like that. He's not so much mad at himself as so much he's mad at a situation. I get that
yeah,
as the
exactly. Or
impression.
maybe it's like seeing his reflection in
Reminds him of his
like
parents and yeah,
separatist, or see, yeah,
yeah.
seeing his reflection in this technology reminds him of the mine and that kind of stuff, and
Right. Yeah,
what
maybe.
happened there,
Yeah.
and that's just like upsetting, right? 'Cause it's like, oh, this is the kind of, these were the people that caused that disaster or
Yeah, I think
whatever.
that's a good
So
read. I think that's a good read for
yeah,
sure. Okay, so barracks, shots of a scrapyard where they're pulling stuff apart. We get this like really massive like wall thing falling down. Again, think the effects are very good. I like we seem to spend a lot of time watching ships be disassembled in Star Wars. Um,
yeah,
so I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know what to deal with it. We never see them being built almost ever, but we see them being disassembled constantly.
Oh yeah,
Um, so I think that's interesting. Andor meets with his buddy Brosso. He's out on the yards doing his job, just working like a regular dude. And he's telling him, "Hey, listen, I have the money to pay you back. I'm gonna go. I'm taking off, but it's gonna be with my mom. She'll pay you back, and please take care of her. You
right,
know."
yeah,
Um, and then he says, I think a line that is very fascinating to me. He says, "I'll be back. I'll find a way." Now,
right, yeah.
it's possible that he'll never be back, which I think is very possible. Of course, how's he going to get his droid back? I think we want to see more of that droid, so it'd be a
Oh
shame if we
yeah,
don't. But either way, I mean, I am interested to if this is all we get for Ferrix, this line will have a lot more weight to it, especially when you see that
right.
one of the very last shots of this episode is Brasso's face as he's kind of thinking about Andor. It's implied that he's thinking about Andor, and just kind of the sad look on his face.
Yeah.
So
Again, that's
I
another
just
one of
found
those
that
like
interesting.
Han Solo parallels when Han says he's going to come back, right, to get
Right. What's her
what's
name?
her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, said,
Khaleesi.
Kira,
Yeah.
Kira, and he's like, I'm going to come back as soon as I can, and then it's like, they
And
never
he
actually
never
make it
he's
back.
never able to make it back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great pull. Very good comp. Um Meanwhile, Luthen has arrived in town and he meets Bix, his contact. She says that there's been a complication. She's mentioning the bulletin. He seems to be aware of it, and he's fine
Right.
with it. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, he's not too worried, but he does want to make it quick regardless. And he's like, well, can we trust him? The classic, he'll be there. Great line. Always love when you can say he'll be there.
Yeah.
It either means two things, and if he is there, it means that he is reliable. If he's not there, it means he's not reliable. That's the movie shorthand for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So just then, the security team arrives over the planet, and their transport ships are launched, as you mentioned before. Very cool. I love the music here. Very suspenseful, drum beat stuff. Very good. Chef's kiss.
Yes.
Flashback. B2 is in good shape. We see B2 in kind of like his like powered up shiny mode, and you're like, oh, okay, this
Yeah.
interesting. We see him; he's not stuttering, and we meet Cassian's mom again. This time for the first time in the timeline, and they're scrounging through the crashed ship. The impression is that these are like scrappers, right? They saw the ship crash. They're here to grab what they can before the Republic
Right.
arrives to clean up their mess, right?
Right.
And they also hear Cassian breaking stuff, and we hear that and then as they enter the room, we get the line "Republic frigate approaching," Which,
Right.
first of all, I want to see a modern, like, graphical version of a Republic frigate. We don't get to see that, and I'm a little like, as they were leaving the planet, I would have liked to have seen that. But
Right. See
it's
one in the distance or something.
expensive. I get it,
Yeah.
but a shame in my opinion. So they either way, this is one of those cool crosscuts. Republic frigate approaching. Crosscut to Imperial ships landing. Right. These, or I guess they're not technically Imperial ships. They're these security guard ships. But anyway, cool cut. They land and they got those cool little wing flap things that fold up, but they're like super tiny. It's very
Love
cute.
those.
Yeah, very good. Shots of people reacting to the cops arriving. Mostly people not happy about it. They're like, "Oh, we haven't seen blues here in a long time." Like the use of blues because they're wearing
Yeah.
blue, and of course we're used to associating the term blue with cops, right? So from this moment forward, I am just going to refer to them as cops because it's easier. Okay.
Yeah, that's
And they are
yeah.
essentially cops. So.
Yeah.
Brosso seems to kind of, as he sees the cops and he knows about the bulletin, and he, after hearing what, maybe he doesn't know about the bulletin, but he definitely had that conversation with Cassian. He seems to kind of put pieces together, two and two together, and is like, huh, interesting. So I thought that was a cool little foreshadowing of what he does later.
Yeah.
We then see a shot of Cassian waiting. Cut to flashback. She wants, his mom wants to take him with them before the Republic gets there. So there's a brief argument with her and her male companion. Unclear what their relationship is. And she's saying, "No way, let him go." He's saying, or she's basically saying, I can't let him stay here. You know, they'll kill him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So she drugs him. And
yeah.
She drugs him and kidnaps him, basically.
And I'm assuming she means, because, like, obviously, so from what I'm gathering from this whole thing is that the Republic shot down this separatist plane. It crashed onto this planet. Now the Republic are coming to kind of, like, whatever, see the
Clean
damage,
up
that
their
kind of
mess.
thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Republic, they're not talking about the Republic killing those kids. I think they mean the separatists showing up later, right?
Ooh, I don't think so. I think that it's
Like, why would
unclear
they-
exactly what the timeline is here, but
I
it's possible that
guess.
this is a proto-Empire Republic thing.
I see. So they're, like, cleaning up some last remnants.
Right.
The separatists. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this can't be, like, you know, like Jedi and clones, because they wouldn't kill a bunch of
they
kids.
did reference, like, we know from the trailers that the clones are in the show. There is
Okay.
clones.
But I mean, like,
troopers.
yes, clones, but I mean not like Jedi.
But at this point, they would be the evil
Ones.
version of the clones. Right?
Bad clones. Yeah.
Yeah.
The brainwashed ones. Post Order 66.
Yeah. So I think it's
Okay.
possible that if this Republic cruiser
Gotcha.
was full of evil clones, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. If it's post Order 66, then they're gonna be like Crosshair.
And we don't
do
know
what they're told
exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, turns out Crosshair is just an asshole, but that's different. That's a different story. But
yeah. Okay. Because I was like, it's so hard to, like, hear Republic and then be like, oh yeah, the Republic's gonna come and kill all these kids.
Well, war
But-
is not.
Yeah.
You know, war is war. It's not pretty, right?
No,
so
of course.
crazy stuff like that could happen. Even from,
Yeah.
you know, we haven't seen all the stories of what the Republic did during the
Right. Yes.
And remember, they were under orders often by the Chancellor. So
of
there
course,
could have been a lot of terrible things that they've committed, maybe without them knowing it.
Yeah.
killing
I'm
kids
sure
might
that's
be-
probably what they're assuming is like, well, they're going to show up here, and who knows what their orders are going to be.
Right. For all we know, clones
yes.
killed all their parents and didn't kill those kids because they couldn't do it at that time.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's
Maybe that's
true.
why they're all there, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, cut back to Ferrix, and we're at Marva's house. That's his mom, just in case. We haven't used that name for a while, so Marva's house. As the cops arrive with a warrant for the arrest of Andor, they don't even wait. They just barge right in.
No.
She tells them that they should be ashamed of themselves.
Love that.
Great line. Yeah.
Wait, yeah, when like an older lady says that to like someone of authority, it just
Right.
like hits different. I just
Yeah,
like
and
it.
I think you get, and so this is where you start start seeing Cyril start to kind of bend or crack under the pressure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So he's like first of all, he feels like what does this person mean? Like, I should be ashamed of myself. I'm just doing my job here.
Yes,
okay?
yes, yeah.
Back off, lady. Right. So they find, this is kind of funny, I think. So they find B2 and they threaten to take his power unit, and they're like, they can't do that. Don't listen to them.
Right.
And but it doesn't matter because unfortunately Andor picks the exact wrong time to
Yes.
use his comms.
To use his comms.
Yeah, to call B2. He's like, tell her I'm sorry. And they instantly track it, and they're like, okay, we know what we're doing. We're gonna leave 2 cops here, and we're gonna go after
Yeah.
them. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tim is continuing to act suspicious with Bix.
Mm-hmm.
That's just just continue to think about that. Andor meets with Luthen while the cops deal with an unruly public. So Andor and Luthen meet for the first time. Meanwhile, back at the house, the locals are getting restless. They saw the cops barge into someone's house. They don't like that. So the pressure's starting to build.
Oh, yeah.
They barter. He says 40,000 credits. He says that's a deal. It apparently lets you track Imperial coordinates. Yada yada yada. It's like the definition of just a thing you need to go get in a story.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, Luthen is worried Andor is maybe scamming him, but he's playing it so cool that it just feels like he's basically just going through the motions here, you know?
Right, yeah.
Where it's like, really, if is this like, are you scamming me? Are you saying that if I was dissatisfied, I could come back?
Yeah.
Which I think is such a funny,
It's
funny.
like, oh, you'll be here? And he's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
So meanwhile, Bix is warned that the cops are after Andor, right? Her friend comes and then she's like, right away, she's like, someone ratted him out, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then she's like, I got to go help him. No one else is going to. So she jumps into action. And then Tim was like, wait, he can take care of himself. So
Yeah.
He's like, she's like, what do you mean? I didn't say who I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then, the ice cold moment where she's like, do you remember if I told you that Andor was born? And he's like, he doesn't know what to say. And he's like, because I do.
Oh.
And she's just, and then that line, how could you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good stuff.
Such a good scene.
That's what I'm talking about. So, sure, it's a little slow. Sure, it seems a little maybe up its own butt a little bit if you were, you know. But when you get these kind of like
up its own butt.
great
just a
character
good emotional
moments,
scene.
yeah, I just think you get these great character moments. You just don't get these moments in Star Wars very often. It's often so over the top and blustery and all this kind of other the stuff that feels like it needs to be part of an opera, right? Hence the space opera title. This is subtle. It's pointed. It feels true to life. I think it's exactly what, if you were someone who'd been waiting for an adult version of a Star Wars story, this is it. And if you don't watch it, it's
absolutely.
your own fault.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm saying if you don't watch it and we don't get more of this stuff, or we don't get more of it for a long time, you have no one to blame but yourself.
That's true.
Okay, so we cut back to Luthen. This is where it starts cutting back and forth really quickly. Luthen continues to barter. He knows their game, basically, Bix in there. They've been bribing folks to leave valuables on scrapped ships so that they can sell them on the black market. It's a pretty good racket, actually.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like, that's all fine and good. You didn't get this from one of those things. Where do you get it? Right? And I love this part where he's like, listen, I'll give you another 1,000 credits if you tell me how you got it. And then you get this really cool speech, which is also in the trailer, which is this like, they just wouldn't believe, they cannot imagine that someone like me would just walk in the door and take their stuff, spit in their food, which I like that a lot, by the way. Spit in their food, take their gear. They just don't even, they can't even conceive of it. And Luthen, this is where this really clicks in for Luthen. And he's like, oh, okay, you know what? This is I'm here for this thing. And he says it later. He's like, I'll take the box if that's all you can offer. But I'm actually here for you. I know all about you. I know your story. What you just told me really locks it in because they don't get it. They're so smug and satisfied with themselves that they think that nothing can touch them. And I have a way to take them down for real.
Exactly.
And when he says, don't you want to fight these bastards for real? Totally. This is where I'm like, yeah, this show is good. This is how I know. Yeah, so good. So he does mention that he might know his dad in some way. Interesting. I would like to. I guess maybe we'll peel that onion back a little bit as we go. But we'll see. He also makes this this comment about like listening to that voice that tells you when to do something and where to go and how to act and all that kind of stuff. And it's like we're going to be giving them a different voice or something like that. I didn't feel like that part necessarily landed as well. It's like
Right,
we're
yeah.
going to both do these both like cool metaphorical speeches about stuff. The one would have probably been fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Anyway, meanwhile, back on the streets, the locals are banging pots and pans or whatever those metal things are, wind chimes, something, as a warning as a sign for Andor. Basically, they don't know who the cops are after. They just know the cops are out there looking for somebody, so they do this kind of like signal that they and it's basically like a giant. It's like someone put on "fuck the police" on a massive speaker.
Yeah, I love it. Everyone just starts boarding up their like all the shops closed. They're like, nope. They're like, we're not giving you any information. We're not letting you shake us down. Like, we're just gonna make a bunch of racket and tell everyone that you're here.
And they say it's intimidation, sir, bluff and bluster. But like, I don't think that's really what it is. It's like it's more of like a form of community. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So to some degree, it is intimidation because it's like we're together on this, you know.
Oh, for sure.
So Luthen needs him to go. They need to both go, and because when they discover that Andor has a comm, we get the first of I assume will be many rules. Rule number 1: never carry anything you don't control. I hope we get a bunch of those. We can just list those out. But anyway, so that's how they figure out how they know they're getting coming for them. Meanwhile, Bix gets detained while she's running to go help him. This feels like convenient for the plot, but it also it rings true to life, and I think that still works. So Luthen and Andor make a plan to go through the furnace, under the furnace, to find a speeder so they can cut across the wastes and get to their ship. Meanwhile, Luthen blows the door open, and he says, "Look, I put slap charges on the door on the way in." And then we get rule number 2: build your exit on the way in, which again, very cool. So they blow the door. A firefight ensues. There's a bunch of these chains with what looks like maybe engine blocks or something on them.
This was so cool. I like this scene.
As they start falling and collapsing, it really creates a lot more like visual, interesting dynamics for this gunfight.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool.
Yeah. So they make their escape just in time as the backup cops kind of are scrambling out in the town trying to figure out what's going on, right? They're like, there's 3 of them. No, there's 2 of them, right? Like, they're on the move, or they're heavily armed, you know, all this kind of stuff. I just think that's so good. But they leave the box behind. Again, this is kind of that, like, it's like, I thought you were smart, which I thought was a good line, too. It's like, this is not about that. Like, save your skin, man. So, think bigger. Tim, meanwhile, he finds that Bix is being detained, and like an idiot, just runs straight at the cops and gets shot straight in the chest. Sarah, here's the thing: I didn't like Tim, but did I want him to get shot in the chest? No, I did not. No, I didn't.
And it's kind of like a little bit of a bummer, I guess, for her, because it's like their last interaction wasn't that great, and then he gets killed right in front of her. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's all a direct result of his own actions.
It is.
To some degree.
It literally
here,
is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think there is something poignant about how she gets like handcuffed to that door. And then she has to just sit there and look at his dead body for who knows how long.
So
I think that's a. They don't really highlight that necessarily, but I think that's interesting. Okay, so they make their. Bex gets detained. Yada yada. Tim gets shot. They want the cops are talking about how they need air support, so they send one of the cops back to the ship to get into to kind of give them cover. The cops are at this point they're completely scrambling. They're shocked as they've discovered there's at least 2 of them. They decide that wait, hold on. It's really it seems like they're kind of like gonna figure this stuff out. Hold on, we're going to set up here and wait for them to come to us, right? And I think again, this is really funny. Like the way that they like toss the guns to each other. They think they're so fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's like you like fascist losers. Like it's
Yeah.
like we're talking about real people here. You're affecting real people's lives. One of these people just got shot. An innocent bystander was just
Yeah.
killed. You do the no. I mean, they don't know that necessarily, but some of them do, and it's like they do not care.
No.
And
Absolutely
it
not.
just very, again, poignant. I think, and a little on the maybe a little on the nose, but again, we're talking about space Nazis here, so.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, inside, so Cyril sets up inside one of these houses. He's like waiting for them to come. He's got like his like little hiding spot. And then we cut back to Andor's mom just for one quick line where she gets to say, "Hear that sound? That's the
Mhm.
sound of a reckoning." Which again, of course, that's the
Oh,
name of the episode.
her
But
lines
then
are
she's like,
so good.
"Yeah, I know the writing is top notch here."
Yeah.
I just why I can't wait for like the political intrigue stuff because I think that's gonna be
Yeah.
so layered
Like,
and
how sinister is
juicy.
that for, like, these kind of bumbling kind of cops
Oh, right,
to have this little old lady be like,
terrifying.
"You hear that?" Yeah, and just like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
that would scare the shit out of me if I was them.
Right. And then she's like, and you think you're worried now. You should be
Uh-huh.
wait until it stops, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh boy. Good stuff. Chills. So okay. So we see a shot of Brasso walking away from their military transport or cop transport thing. Again, we don't necessarily know what's going on. I wasn't sure what had happened, but you're like, he definitely did something to that ship, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then when the knocking stops, right?
Mhm.
Um, it gets super quiet. I love how they cut all the music
Oh,
and it's just
so good.
very um, silent essentially. And then Andor ambushes Cyril. And by the way, I love this when
So good.
he's like, how many people? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, and
Yeah.
then you hear just from the off screen, kill him.
Yeah.
And then later,
So
listen, if
good.
you're not gonna do it, I'll kill him. And
Yeah.
I think that I just like listen. I don't know if that was played for laughs, but I thought that was really funny.
Oh, yeah.
And then
It's like the
so he's like, okay,
typical.
okay. Tells them
Yeah.
the numbers. He gives them the exact numbers. 12 plus 2 officers, 14 in total, right? And then they tie him up. So you were gonna say something?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say it's just like that almost like that good cop, bad cop kinda
Mm-hmm.
routine
Mm-hmm.
where it's like
Mm-hmm.
one of them's really mean and then the other one's like, "Oh, you better tell me because if you don't, like,
Yeah,
this guy's gonna
totally.
beat you up." But in this
Batman
case, it's like
Robin.
he's gonna kill
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Um so they tie him up and then we see this guy gets on his ship and takes off. And then, again, I just gotta say, for this like little throwaway scene, um, we they spent a lot of money because
Yeah, oh,
the ship
yeah.
takes off. He's flying it, but it's attached to a tow cable, attached to some piece of like wreckage or whatever that's super heavy, and it's causing the
Yeah.
ship to like not fly properly. So it smashes into the side of a massive building, um, which is I thought looked amazing, looked
Yeah, it
super
looks
cool.
so good.
Yeah, and so the ship crashes. Then we cut back, and they're like, "Was that them? It has to be them." And then one of the person's like, "Well, if that's true, then they're behind us." And
Right.
that's when you get the like, "Shit, we're under siege. They're everywhere." And I laughed. I laughed
Oh,
at
yeah,
that
because it's
so
like, "There's
hard. Yeah,
2 of them, you
yeah.
idiots." Yeah.
But it's not really because they did have help. They had help from the
That's true.
people,
That's
right?
true.
So they're everywhere, and it's so funny. So one of the cops finds Cyril tied up, just in time to see a speeder take off down the road. The cops open fire, and just when they think they've got them, the speeder flips, and they're like, again, I said there's that little smirk and smile that
Oh,
they give to
yeah.
each other, like
Just,
we
like,
did
so
it.
proud of
Yeah, he's
themselves.
like,
Yeah.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
And so they are approaching the speeder, and just then, Luthen and Andor take off on a speeder bike, and they blow up the speeder,
Yeah.
and it. I just love how you get these classic shots of people walking away from an explosion, and it's like they don't look at explosions, and it's super cool and badass.
Mhm.
Cyril's not looking, but when it
No.
explodes, he like totally like flinches,
Yes, yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
he's terrified. He's absolutely terrified. And they take off, and then you got like the rest of the cops are all scrambling. They're like trying to get them. They're like, we got to get out of
Yeah.
here, calling for evac. He's like, did you get my last message? And Cyril is just literally standing there, blank face, can't
Uh-huh.
believe what just happened. I think he's going through like, how do I explain this?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
how is this gonna work? I have no
Yeah. He's
idea.
going through all those emotions of being like, "How did this happen? Like, exactly. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna explain this? Like, what's gonna happen now? Like, all of those emotions of like, I'm
Right.
gonna lose my job, or they're gonna kill me, or what the hell do I do now?
Yeah, exactly. But also it's like I think you mentioned before, this is kind of like his crucible, right? Where
Oh,
he
absolutely.
kind of like is dyed in the wool at this moment, right?
Hmm.
That, the rebels are a scourge, they're a scum
Oh
on
yeah, he's gonna get
on the
reamed
galaxy.
out, and then he's
Yeah.
gonna get all mad, and now he's
And then
gonna
he's
be
gonna
on a
get
vengeance
fired
quest.
probably and then
Uh
join
huh.
the Empire, right?
Yeah.
Of some kind. That's my prediction. So cut to Andor and Luthen. They're on a speeder bike. There's a quick cut to his mom. She's crying.
Oh, so
And
sad.
B2, we see it both in the past and the present. We cut back and forth. Um, Bix is also rescued, but we see Tim's body and Brasso's reaction, like I said before, this kind of melancholy. We're happy that they escaped, but the general feeling is of sadness.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and there is some beautiful shots of the speeder as it's going over like water and land and like cutting back
Yeah.
and forth on those things. I thought that
I
was really
love that
cool.
shot. It was
Yeah,
so cool. It almost looked like different plots of like farmland and
yeah.
water and like different whatever it was, like aqua farms and that kind of thing. Like I
But
don't know, it was
I
really
get the
cool.
impression that the industry, like what they're doing, like the scrapping, is what ruined the farmland, and that's kind of
Probably.
like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're. Anyway, industrialization, sad times. Anyway, beautiful shots of the speeder, as I said. Andor and Luthen make it to the ship, and they take off as we intercut with his mom saving him back in the flashbacks on a random ship
Hmm.
from the past. And we end with a shot of both Andor's face and his mom's face in sunrise or sunset, um,
Yeah.
as they kind of like he has a birth into a whole new life, both in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
past and the future. So very exciting third episode, action packed, lots of cool symbolism and all that kind of stuff. I was a big fan of episode 3.
Me
Would you say
too.
that was your favorite?
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite out of all of them.
Okay. Well, hey, we've been doing this for now. This has been a long episode, 3 episodes to cover.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about kind of our general feelings and thoughts on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about those things in future episodes, and where we'll have a little bit more time to kind of not just recap elements. And I know, by the way, people really love those moment to moment recaps, which I wasn't planning on doing for this, but I thought, hey, you know what? Want to do the work, right? So um, here it is. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to covering this for the rest of the season. The schedules may adjust and change a little bit as as I have to move around a lot. I'm going to be all over the place over the next month and a
Yeah.
half. So just be patient with us on that. And in the meantime, we'll talk to you next week for season 1, episode 4 of Andor. Until then, may the force be with you. Take care.